please ask you guys to turn your cameras on if possible. We really, really highly encourage it so we have good engagement. Thank you, Ayesha and Furqan.
We'll go through our guidelines in a little bit, but Ayesha, how about we go to the next slide?
Sure. Okay.
And start breaking that ice.
All right, it is 7 o'clock, so, okay, why isn't it working? All right, there you go. Okay, guys, as you can see, so for those of you who are here, could you please write down the name of your school, your grade in the chat, and also please let us know what you would like to learn from this workshop. Why did you sign up for this? And then we'll go from there. And please turn your cameras on as well for those of you who are just joining.
I'll paste the guidelines into the chat, but we'll also discuss them right before we start. Actually, okay. Nabiha, you were also there for our first workshop, and you were very enthusiastic.
Thank you.
Wonderful to have you.
Thank
I'm seeing
you.
cams come on bit by bit and feeling great for the respect people are showing to the guidelines. If you're unable to switch on your cam for whatever reason, please let Zahid know. It's very important for us to know that there is a real person, a student attending this workshop.
Okay, it's nice to see everyone contributing to the chat and telling us what grade they're in and what schools they belong to. Does anyone want to turn on their mic and talk about it since we're still waiting for people to join? Does anyone want to introduce themselves? Especially for our more experienced attendees who attended the workshop on critical thinking as well. Why don't you guys set the stage for other people?
So Iman Ijaz is saying, she's from 12th grade, I would like to extend my understanding of research writing. But why? I'd like to know why. Are you hoping to go into research? Are you hoping to go into social sciences? You can unmute and speak, Iman.
I'm actually not sure what I want to do like after 12. So I'm just trying everything I can.
I love that response. We should be able to admit that we don't know what we want to do and, commit to figuring it out. Iman, I'm 26 years old and I'm still trying to figure it out.
I think most of us are, and I think this is the right thing to do when you don't know what you want to do, to explore all the different options. And I think for Bushra and I think that's the primary goal of this workshop, to introduce you guys to alternative options that we maybe are not introduced to in school about what you can do after high school. So really excited about that.
And people who joined the first workshop, they know that they still have time to turn on their cams. If not, they will keep on getting messages from you. Polite and gentle reminders.
If you have a good reason, just let Zahid know. You'll notice that when people have their cams on, because we can't have you all unmuted, but you have your cams on, the engagement is just so much better because people know who's in the room. So we're trying to make this as close to a real classroom experience as possible. And of course, safety is also an important concern for us.
Yes, it definitely improves the learning experience. It improves the participation, and it encourages others also, to participate, speak up when they see the other side.
We have a lot of students from Pakistan, Islamia, Sharjah, and it's really interesting because we actually haven't yet done any student assemblies there. So I'm wondering, how did you guys hear about our workshop? Can someone unmute, maybe Manar?
Yes, basically we saw as I've joined the PYF Dubai on Instagram, so we receive all the messages, and I'm contacted with Ala Kamran as well. He's the moderator of maybe all the stuff. So he told me about it, and I got it from the PYF Dubai as well. So we tried to spread it. I put it on my story, and other people send me, response me, so I could get them the passwords and the Zoom things, the passwords and the codes. That's all.
That's wonderful.
That's great.
One of the great things about, actually, fun fact, Ayesha, where are you? Ayesha Burney.
I'm in Oman, actually. I'm not even in the UAE. I did my undergrad in the UAE, and that's how I got involved with Pakistan Youth Forum, but I haven't been back in more than 2 years now. But, that's, Zoom's in the bag because we get to do things like this. So I'm so excited to see all of us come together over here.
I was a bit disappointed that we have to do the academy virtually, but then I realized that this means we get to bring students from all across the UAE together on one platform, and I think that's totally worth it. So even in the future, we want to keep doing both virtual and in-person things so everyone can connect. That's great. A lot of introductions coming through.
I just want to acknowledge all the introductions coming through before we start. And I think Sundar said that she plans on being a scientist. It does not sound weird at all. It sounds very ambitious, and I love that. And I hope we have something to offer to you as well. And I'm pretty sure we do, because no matter what field you go into, it's nice to have an understanding of disciplines across the board. And I'm sure there's going to be something in here for you as well, inshallah.
Inshallah. One small request to everyone participating: if you can change your Zoom name to your full name, ideally, if not, at least the first formal name. Thank you.
It's interesting for me that a lot of people have very general reasons for being here, which is great. But it makes me think that not a lot of people know about the social sciences or what research writing would entail. And I love the fact that people are so open to just trying something new. But I'm also so excited to introduce you guys to the social sciences with Ayesha, because we both Ayesha, did you know about the social sciences in high school?
When I was your age, I had no idea what the social sciences were.
I didn't know what the term social science meant. We're going to talk about that a little bit during the presentation. All right, so just 2 more minutes and then we'll get started. We have a 9th grade student from Al Amal. That's interesting, Hadia. We've been trying to get in touch with your school coordinator. It has not been very successful. So if you can help us with that, please do PM me at some point. It's wonderful to see students from all over joining. What else? I'm sure, I think a lot of students here have not yet written their intros. Come on, there are 28 people here. 5 of us are either leading or volunteering, so we should have 23 responses in the chat. Who are we missing? Maybe I'll just ask a few people to speak up. Rihab Afzal. Hi. How are you doing today?
Hi. I'm good. How are you?
Good, thanks. What school are you from?
I'm from English language.
Oh, English. Were you in one of the student assemblies that we did?
No, I wasn't. This is my first meeting.
Okay, cool. And what brings you here? What brings you to this workshop?
Actually, I am in Saudi Arabia right now, and I haven't going to school. I'm virtually attending it, and it was really, I wanted to try something new and check out and learn something new rather than studies. So I got a mail from you guys, and I was like, I'm excited to learn about this and try something new.
I love that response. That's amazing. I'm so glad there's another person outside the UAE as well attending this.
Before we start, a minute before we start, a little disappointed that we don't have enough people with their cams on. Please do message, do try to switch on your cam first of all. And also, Zahid will keep messaging you until you give him a good enough reason why you don't have your cam on. All right, so with that, I'm just going to quickly go over the guidelines. First of all, welcome again to the second workshop in the Winter Academy. This is the second of maybe like 16 workshops that'll be happening all through November and December, so stay tuned. So some quick guidelines. Please make sure your Zoom name matches your sign-up name. Please keep your camera switched on throughout the workshop. Use the raise hand function or type on the chat to answer. Please only unmute when prompted by the workshop instructor. So in order to avoid like background noise and that kind of interruption, we would like everyone when they're not speaking to remain unmuted. Even I might mute myself when I am not speaking. But at the same time, please keep your cams on if you can. So does everyone here, who here knows what the raise hand function is and how to use it? Let's see some thumbs up. If you know how to use a raise hand function, give me a thumbs up. I don't see enough thumbs ups. I'm a little bit worried. So the raise hand function, if you click on participants, which is in the bottom bar, you know, the toolbar of your Zoom window, on your right hand side, right above the chat, you should see the raise hand function, and you should just be able to click on it if you want to answer or speak. You can also message one of the volunteers if you haven't had the chance to speak or want to say something. You can also put it on the chat. We'll try to keep up as much as possible. So besides that, be respectful and polite to the workshop lead, volunteers, and other participants. Disrespectful, indecent, or offensive behavior will not be tolerated. Goes for anything. All discussions on the chat should relate to the workshop. Because there are so many people here, it's important to stay focused on the topic. Lastly, 2 points, come prepared to discuss, engage, and express yourself. This is not a lecture, it's an interactive workshop. And finally, have fun and learn. So we will be calling on you to speak because you're here to interact. You're not here, this is not a lecture, it's not a webinar. This is an interactive workshop. Okay, so I think we've broken a lot of ice. We've chatted a little bit, we've told you about the guidelines. Let's get started.
All right. I'm ready. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. All right, guys, so welcome again to the workshop. So just a little bit of an intro of who we are. I'll start since I'm on the left side of the slide. So my name is Ayesha Burney. I did my undergrad in international studies from the American University of Sharjah. And later on in the workshop, I'm going to tell you how I actually discovered the social sciences. But for now, after that, I went to the LSE to do my master's in comparative politics. And ever since then, I've been working over here in Oman at the Sultan Qaboos University as a research assistant at the Department of Political Science. So that's my background with social science research writing. Over to you, Bushra.
So as you can tell by now, my name is Bushra, and I'm also the head of education at the PYF at the moment. So my background, I was born and raised in the UAE, grew up in Dubai. And then I went to the Westminster School in Qasas, if any of you might have heard of it. And then after I graduated from high school, I went to pursue economics and Chinese double major at Williams College in Massachusetts, USA. It's a liberal arts college, about 2,000 students, and pursuing a variety of majors. So if you don't know what a liberal arts college is, I encourage you to look it up after this workshop. And after I graduated, I came back to the UAE. I worked as a consultant at a market research firm. Then I decided that the 9 to 5 was not for me, and I got into freelancing as a market researcher and a copywriter. I'm still doing that, but right now my focus is moving into education and doing a lot more of this, what we're doing right now. So as you can tell, we're two very passionate individuals, and we're really excited to have you here. So with that, let's jump straight into what we're talking about today. So today's agenda is research writing for the social sciences. So we're going to start off by introducing you to the social sciences. Let's see how many of you know what that means. Then we'll go into what does it mean to be a social science researcher or to do research in social sciences. We'll briefly go over the structure of a research paper, and then we'll go into specific segments that we think will give you a really good foundation in research writing for the social sciences. The first is, what is a good research question? How do you write a good research question? You'll discover it's way harder than it sounds. Secondly, what is a thesis statement? This sounds really hard, but actually there's a process and a way to do it that makes it very simple. There will be quite a few activities and discussions and chances to engage. So please stay alert, stay with us. And just remember, this is not a technical workshop. We're not here to dump jargon on you. If there's something you don't understand, please let us know in the chat. Let one of the volunteers know as well. Maybe if you missed something, we can come back to it. Take your questions down. You can also reach out to us after the workshop. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Ayesha to get started.
All right, thank you so much, Bushra. So guys, I think from the discussion we already had, one of the biggest questions is what exactly are the social sciences? Now coming from my background, when I was in high school, I had the hard sciences. So I was, like physics, math, and the most I did was ICT and English literature was the furthest away I went, right? Which was humanities. But I did not know anything else beyond that because my school just didn't have the options. Now, if you do have some of these options in school, I think that's amazing. But for those of you who don't know, the social sciences are, a discipline, right? And within that, there's many sub-disciplines. It is a form of, academic, inquiry, right? And basically, in a nutshell, the social sciences, what they do is they help us answer the hows and whys of human behavior. There's many different disciplines. This is not an exhaustive list, but for example, you have political science, which is my background. And political science itself has 3 different branches. You have political theory, you have comparative politics, which looks at domestic politics in countries, comparing them to, between states. And then you have international relations, which is, how do states interact with each other and what are the theories that address all of that? So, why do countries go to war and how to create peace, all of that kind of stuff. So there's many different subfields within that as well. Personally, I did comparative politics within that to looking at domestic political structures. Other than that, you have history, which is, you take evidence from, historical like backgrounds and basically history. You look into historical inquiry to answer some of the questions we have now. I think history actually lies at the base of most social sciences. Over to you, Bushra, if you want to explain some of the others.
Yes. What I find fascinating about the social sciences is that they're really broad and they're really vast, and that tells you that there are so many different ways of examining human behavior. Our behavior is so complex and so interesting that there are many different lenses you can look through it now. And actually, a really interesting trend in academia is interdisciplinary research, which means combining a number of these different fields to study a particular subject or area to give us more nuanced or better understanding of that area. So I myself, as an econ major, dabbled quite a bit in economics, wrote a lot of econ papers and read a lot of econ papers. Economics is an interesting outlier in social sciences because it's somewhere between a quantitative and a qualitative science. What makes it quantitative is that right now there's a huge focus on collecting data and analyzing it and using mathematical models, statistical models to predict behavior. But at the root of it, a lot of the definitions that we use are qualitative and subjective. Say, for example, when it comes to a market, like when it comes to behavior, when it comes to choice, a lot of it is kind of subjective and defined by things that are affected by a lot of different variables. So econ is a very interesting outlier in the social sciences. I'm in love with anthropology. Does anyone here know what anthropology is? Anyone? Let's see if we get a raise of hands at the moment. Anthropology. Anyone wants to make a wild guess? No?
Sundus raised her hand.
Sundus, go for it. What's anthropology?
Basically the study of human societies and cultures.
That's a brilliant answer. How do you know about anthropology?
Well, I do go to, encyclopedias.
Wow.
I read them a lot, so.
Now you're intimidating me. But amazing. You're super smart. I had no clue what anthropology was until I sat in my first anthropology class. I was just looking to fill my schedule, and I fell in love with it because
I just know the basics. I don't know much about it.
Oh, well, I hope you get to find out. Anthropology is a fascinating study of culture and society. So it's basically more about observing how we act in different contexts and going into minute details. So anthropology uses this methodology or this way of research called ethnography. And ethnography basically involves like observing for extended periods of time, very carefully, taking very detailed notes on specific scenarios or circumstances or contexts. Done that couple of different times, and that has made me an excellent spy. And I think if you ever get a chance to do ethnography, please go for it. So that's that. One more thing about history, I also love history. And the reason why is because when I studied history in college, I realized that the way I've been understanding history my whole life is completely wrong. The study of history is basically not looking at facts, not just looking at what we consider facts, but questioning what fact is. So a lot of history research looks at what we call narrative. narrative basically means a story, right? So the whole discipline of history looks at history as a kind of narration. So how are different people, for example, if we look at the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, it's understood very differently from very different lenses if you look at two different societies. So history is the study of how people construct their own narratives about how they came to be where they are. And they definitely using what kind of evidence do they even consider as evidence? So social sciences are fascinating, and we'll now dive into how they researched.
I think Furqan has his hand raised.
Okay.
Yeah, I did raise my hand when you asked the question about anthropology. So I was going to answer, but you explained it very well, more than me.
Awesome. I'm glad you know about it though. So now let's dive into, so actually the next slide is about how Ayesha and I discovered the social sciences because we had no clue. Ayesha, I'll let you start.
All right, thank you, Bushra. So like I said, I did not know what the social sciences were. I went into university. I was a journalism major for 2 years, kind of at the cusp of it, but didn't really know much. And in my second year, I had to pick a course because I was one course short. And the last thing that I wanted to pick was Intro to Political Science, but that was the only thing available. And I had to fill in my credits. And so I picked that. And, the first class, my professor asked us to do this quiz that showed us where we lie on the political spectrum. Like, are we left-leaning, right-leaning? What are our views on markets? What are our views on how involved the government should be in our decisions? What are our ideologies with regards to like lots of important questions about human interaction and societies and how societies function. And I instantly fell in love with it. We started off with political theory, and we studied so many different, theorists like Hobbes, John Locke. What is a social contract? Which is, I'm sorry if I'm overwhelming you guys, by the way, but it's nice. This is just an introduction, and if any of this interests you, you can look it up. But basically ideas of what is a state and what are its responsibilities towards citizens, right? Anyway, so we did that and went through it all, went through domestic politics, international politics, and that completely changed my entire trajectory. And after that, I switched my major halfway through my degree. After halfway through my degree, I switched my major and I made up for the courses, and then I did a master's as well. So that's how I discovered it, by an accident at college.
I think for most of us, it's accidental unless you go to a school where you're introduced. So in my school, we had to choose between science and commerce, what they call commerce, in grade 9. And I chose the hard sciences because my mother told me if you go into the hard sciences, you can switch later on. And even though I loved chemistry, but I didn't enjoy physics at all. I just felt like I wasn't learning.
I loved physics.
Wow, we're opposites then. And I was just like, I want to know more about how the world works. And so one day I picked up my brother's econ textbook in 11th grade, and I just decided that I want to study economics. It was just like, it was mind blowing for me. This is how the world works. This is how the world is organized. This is how wealth is created. This is how wealth travels and how prices are determined. I was fascinated, and that's how my journey began. But then I got to college and I realized that everything I knew about economics was not totally wrong, but just not actually what the field was about. And I discovered a host of other social sciences through the liberal arts system, which encourages you to take classes in different academic disciplines. So here we are, hopefully giving you a very solid introduction to the social sciences and helping you realize there's a lot in there that you can explore to find what interests you. So what have been some of your favorite academic discoveries? Now you're all in high school, and I'm guessing you're taking a lot of the same math, English, language here and there, so hard sciences, econ. But what's the favorite? What is the favorite subject that you enjoy right now in the social sciences? Anyone?
I'll tell you guys how I identify it is, I used to walk into these classes thinking I'm learning something new every single day, and I didn't feel that way about most of my classes. So have you come across anything, even if it's not in the social sciences, but anything that you weren't directed towards, but you accidentally discovered, and you said, hey, there's a form of knowledge that looks like this that I'm interested in? Okay, we've got 2 hands raised. Rehab, go ahead, please.
Okay, so I had absolutely no idea what's there in commerce. I was familiar with science, but then I didn't know anything about commerce, especially economics and accounts. I was too dumb to take science, so I had to take commerce. And when I switched to commerce, and I feel like for first time, when like I studied about economics and it was like my first class in accounts, I was clueless, but I loved it so much that I was like, oh, yeah, I definitely did the right choice choosing commerce and not science.
Yeah, that
Amazing.
was a beautiful answer. बस आपने ये कह के दिल तोड़ दिया कि commerce is for dumb people because I'm just so sick of that. It's not your fault. ये society ने हमारे दिमाग में
No,
डाल दिया
no,
we have to put it
it's
down.
not. No, no, no. Actually, it's I believe that accounts is way too hard, and a science student can never do it. But I am still dumb in accounts too. So
Actually, to go dig deeper, no one is born to be any one thing, in my opinion, honest opinion. You learn different things and you discover what you're good at, and you can basically learn anything you're dedicated towards. Is my personal experience.
yeah, it's right.
Thank you so much for that, Rehat. I'm so glad that you enjoy commerce, and I hope you keep enjoying it. Nabiha?
Yeah, for me, actually, it wasn't too much of a fact. I was just going through YouTube and other resources which are given to me, and sometimes I just got to know about psychology, and it was like really great. Like even though we don't have it in our school, I really hope we do someday, and it's a really great subject to know about, and it's really interesting to me.
Absolutely. I hope you get to explore it one day. Hanan? Really
Hey, yeah. Yesterday, while I was just scrolling my Instagram account, I came across this hottest river kind of thing that exists in Amazon.
Hmm.
So I just came across it and I was so shocked, like to learn it, like what it was, I came across it suddenly. I never knew that it actually existed, So it was kind of a good thing that I came across just recently.
Well, you should consider looking into geography, by the way. And that's also, within the general umbrella of social sciences. So you should consider that
Yeah,
if it interests you.
exactly.
All right, guys. I think thank you everyone for participating. I think we're kind of running behind on time, so we're just going to quickly go to the next slide. So just to give you an idea, we have already talked about this, but let's talk about some of popular papers and issues that are talked about in the social sciences. As we go through the workshop, you'll find out about more as well. But so example number one, this is from, this was the one that stayed in my mind after my master's degree because it's so pertinent to our region, the Middle East. Michael Ross's paper on Does Oil Hinder Democracy? And basically what he said was that, there is a general understanding that as income increases in countries, they become more democratic. But if this income can be traced back to oil wealth, then those countries do not become democratic, right? And he wanted to test this, and it hadn't been tested properly. So what he did was that he got all of this data from over 150 countries, I believe. I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact figure right now. But he ran a regression analysis and tried to analyze this question. And since then, there have been lots of papers responding to this and, finding out, like picking apart the methodology. And this is a huge debate in the study of democratization in the world. So, this is the one type of question that is maybe considered in political science. Bushra?
Paper I'm going to talk about is economic growth and income inequality. And it came out quite a while back. And it was a seminal paper that became the foundation of development economics. And it found an unintuitive finding, which was that For a country to go through period of economic growth, first, that period of economic growth is characterized by high income inequality. So basically, if an economy is growing, the first couple of time periods are going to see income inequality grow, and then income inequality is going to reduce. And that's not intuitive. When we're looking at signs of economic growth, we're looking to see the income gap, the wealth gap between the rich and the poor decrease. And again, he did the same thing, took data from a number of different countries and ran an analysis, and that confirmed his thesis. We were talking about what his thesis is. There are other papers as well. Nimble fingers make cheap workers. Ayesha selected that, and I think it's about women workers and why they are preferred in the textile industry. And the McDonaldization of society is a popular book in sociology, which talks about how mass production, basically, or the fast food culture, is becoming a norm in our society. So social science research gives way to really interesting insights that we even now consider like normal in our everyday life. So with that, let's jump into our first activity.
Yes, into our first activity. Oh, that came up sooner than I. All right, guys. So basically, the first thing we're going to ask you guys to do is we're going to give you a few passages, right? And we're just going to do this as a big group over here. And we have three main questions. They're very basic questions to start you off. First of all, what is being studied? Okay, so what is, the social science? Again, it's a form of inquiry. What is being inquired about? We want you guys to identify that. Also, how does the author want to examine this? So most of the passages you're going to see are either abstracts of papers or introductions. So they will include some indication as to what methodology these authors are going to use to arrive at their answer. And finally, this is a little bit tougher because, like Bushra said at the beginning, there is a trend for interdisciplinary research in the social sciences, but try to have a crack at this. Try to see if you can figure out which discipline these passages belong to. So should I move on to the first passage? All right. Okay.
Let's invite someone to read it. Anyone wants to volunteer? I'm just going through the list of participants. I think I'm just going to start calling on people to. I saw a thumbs up. Asma, please go for it. Thank you.
Yeah. Example 1. Education is the foundation for political, social, and economic development of any country. A viable education system enables the nation to achieve its national goals. Pakistan, as a developing country, has faced critical problems of education since its inception, and therefore, the system of education has failed to deliver according to the aspirations of the nation. There are various factors responsible for the situation. This paper explores some of the critical problems that have so far plagued the education system of Pakistan on the basis of critical review of available literature. The paper presents solutions to the existing problems of the education system of Pakistan.
All right.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Yes, thank you so much, Asma. So since you did read it, do you want to have the first sort of, go at what is being studied and how, well, you can answer any of the questions you want.
I think basically over here, the education system of Pakistan is being studied.
Absolutely. Is there anything in particular that, is being studied about the education system in Pakistan?
I think basically they're talking about how to improve the educational system and all the problems which are occurring and what factors they should improve and what solutions they need to find out about the problems. Basically, they are finding a solution for the existing problems in the education system, the flaws and stuff.
Absolutely, absolutely. And all right, thank you so much. I want to invite other people to come in as well to answer the rest of the questions. So is there anyone else who wants to answer how the author plans on answering this question? I know that Nabiha and Sundus raised their hand. Okay, Nabiha, thank you. You can unmute yourself.
Yeah, over here, they actually says that they want to put critical thinking problems that can be given to the students. Yeah,
okay.
That would be my answer.
Is that your answer to how they want to examine this?
Yes.
All right, okay. All right, awesome. Thank you for answering. Does anyone else want to contribute? I would encourage you to look towards the end of the passage over here, because they actually, I'll tell you, I'll give you a hint. It's in clear words. You can actually recite it out to me from the passage. It's towards the end of it. So does anyone else want to give it a try? Hanan, do you want to go ahead?
Solutions to the existing problems of education system.
So that is what is being studied, but how is it going to be so basically when we're asking, how does the author want to examine this? It's not content based, it's actually more methodology based, right? So what is the author going to do in order to come up with these solutions to the existing problems? And the author does say exactly what they're going to do. It's a little bit of a tough one because maybe it's not something that you expect. Emin, do you want to give it a shot?
His critical review of available literature.
Yes, absolutely. That's great. Thank you so much, Emin. Yes. So basically, this is what is called a literature review. So you know, a lot of the times you have methodology that is, you know, you go into the field and you do interviews maybe, or you collect data, and we talked about that when you have quantitative studies, which have like big regression analyses. But there's also another type of social science writing, which is basically just literature review. And what it does is it looks at all the literature that has been written, all the other studies that have been written about a certain topic, and it tries to bring them together and bridges any gaps in the knowledge. So this is what this paper intends to do to answer that question. And what discipline does this belong to? Quite simple. Furqan, do you want to answer that one?
Maybe it belongs to sociology, maybe.
Sociology, it could be interdisciplinary, so it depends on what lens they're looking through. But you know, education itself is actually one of the disciplines within the social sciences. So like we said, the list wasn't exhaustive, but definitely education. I would actually say, I don't know, Bushra, if you want to comment on this, I would say maybe even development studies. It could be.
Because sociology includes the development, structure, and functioning of the human society, as I've searched it on the Google.
Yeah.
Sure. This is definitely an interdisciplinary one because it's also looking at the political, social, and economic. So there's probably some economics involved, there's political science involved. So that's why education has become a subdiscipline, because it allows you to use different social science lenses on a specific area of focus. It's tricky.
Yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't matter, but what matters is having a specific lens through which you're examining a problem.
Exactly. All right. Okay. Thank you, guys. You can lower your hands. Let's move on to the next one. Bushra?
Sure. So who wants to read this? Let's see a show of hands. I feel like calling someone out. Isha Hafiz, are you there?
Yes.
Thanks. Can you read example 2 for us, or at least the first paragraph?
The United Arab Emirates has witnessed a dramatic influx of foreign workers to accommodate its economy's ambitious growth and development objectives since the discovery of oil in the mid-20th century. The consequential diversity has given rise to a unique and interesting social-cultural dynamic in the country's labor force, particularly at workplaces. The aim of this study, okay, just the first paragraph? Or should I continue?
Continue.
Okay. The aim of this study was to employ an ethnographic approach to the study these impacts, giving the scope and time frame of the project on the experiences of female South Asian middle management professions conducted through a combination of interviews and on-the-site observation. The research finds that nationality can significantly impact one's experience and outcomes in the UAE workforce, including job placement, salaries, management attitudes, and workplace dynamics.
Thanks, Isha. That was wonderful. Would you like to attempt the first question, which is what is being studied?
Dramatic influx of foreign workers.
Not quite, actually. Although I understand your impulse to look for that in the first answer, for the first sentence, but that's not it. It's actually very clearly stated. Does anyone else want to attempt it? But thank you, Isha. You read it really, really well. Anyone else? How about Talal Tariq? Well, what do you think is being studied? I think Talal was having some echo and was unable to answer. Raise your hand if you'd like to answer. Let's see, who do we have?
I think Huda raised her hand
right,
first.
go for it,
we
Huda.
do
What
have
is being studied here?
Yeah, it's economics, probably.
So when we say what is being studied, we're not talking about the academic discipline, we're talking about the topic of this particular paper. What issue is this paper examining? Asma, you also raised your hand? Give a thumbs up.
Yes, I think over here basically they're studying the economic development of the country of UAE basically, and how the foreign workers have an impact on that.
Actually, not quite. This paper is taking a very different approach. So aim of the study, if you look at the second paragraph, the aim of the study was to employ an ethnographic approach to the study of these impacts. It's looking at the experiences of female South Asian middle management professionals. So basically, it's studying the impact of nationality on one's experience and outcomes in the UAE workforce. It's not studying the economy. It's actually studying how South Asian middle management professionals, particularly women, experience life as a worker in the UAE, as part of the UAE workforce. So let's go to the next question. What I'd like you to think about now when you're answering these questions is how the answer is not in the first sentence or the second sentence. It's something you have to kind of read through and understand what the writer is getting at to be able to distill. The second question is, how does the author want to examine this? How does the author want to examine the experiences of female South Asian middle management professionals in the UAE? Does anyone want to volunteer an answer?
Okay, let's pick someone different. I think Khadija raised her hand last time as well. So
Khadija, what do you think? Don't worry about wrong answers, guys. We're all here to learn.
All right, I think it's conducting through a combination of interviews and on-the-site observations.
Wonderful. Thank you, Khadija. You're on the money. You're reading carefully. You understood it. So very clearly here it's stated, conducted through a combination of interviews and on-site observation with research finds, etc., etc. So which discipline do you think this research paper belongs to? Anyone else wants to answer?
I think we can call in Fatma. She had her hand raised.
Fatma? What do you think? Which discipline?
I think it's sociology.
Quite close. In fact, I guess in some instances, some might even conclude it's sociology. What do you think, Ayesha?
I think this is an anthropological paper.
Why?
Well, because it is based on an ethnography. So that's what I would say. What is it actually?
So ethnography is kind of unique to anthropology. It's an anthropological approach where you're basically observing human behavior and taking field notes in order to write about it. Or even when you're doing interviews, you're taking very detailed notes and figuring it out through that interaction. Sociology, I think, brings in, I'm not a sociologist. I didn't even take a sociology class, but I think it involves a bit more theory and a bit more psychology as well. And the methodologies are a little different. So this is actually, it is an anthropology paper. It was written for an anthropology class. Do you want to guess who wrote it? Extra points. This is one of my papers from college, and I just spotted some typos, and I'm very embarrassed. So let's quickly.
I was about to guess it.
It was very fast.
But Bushra, I would really like to read the paper. So if you do want to share it.
Absolutely.
I was not even near to guessing that she wrote the paper.
So, Ayesha, do you think we have time for the third example?
I was just gonna ask you that same question actually.
Let's do it. Let's do the third example really quick.
All right, let's quickly do it. So the third example, do we have any volunteers to read it out? Hadia.
Yeah, sure. 70 years after the partition of Indian subcontinent, the core of the literature on the political implications of making Pakistan has focused on the men behind the separatism movement. However, equally instrumental to the making of Pakistan were the women who participated on both the formal and informal political fronts. Women's emancipation A long league mobilized its masses. However, the statistical documentation of women involvement in the public sphere a few years after the partition paints a different picture. In order to assess both the depth of the promised movement of Pakistan made the impact its creation had on women, it is essential to analyze the accounts and defining statistics of the generation of migrants during the 1950 to 1990s era. This paper seeks to analyze the structures that have birth-headed the discrepancy between the narrative of the new Pakistani woman and the empirical records that paint a polar opposite reality.
Thank you so much, Hadia. Okay, guys, since I know who the author is, I know that this is written in a little bit of a complicated way, but I still want you guys to have a crack at it. So does anyone want to guess what exactly is being studied? So are these hands raised for this question? Nabiha, Huda, and Fatma? Okay. Okay. So okay, now there's only one hand raised. Nabiha?
So I'll just go for it. I'm not sure of the answer, but I think they're trying to learn more about how to react to certain situations in politics and with the major people that are present in the country.
Okay, it's a good start. I think let me just explain it a little bit more in layman terms, right? Because there's some words over here that are jargon. So basically, initially, women's emancipation, it basically means, you know, sort of empowerment. It's another word for empowerment. And then at the end where it says that, you know, there's a discrepancy between what the narrative was. So when Pakistan was being made, there was a lot about, you know, there's a new Pakistani woman and she's going to be, you know, she's going to be on par with men and, you know, absolutely equal rights and everything. And when you look at the statistics, you actually find that education rates and employment rates of women a few decades after Pakistan was made actually went down. So that is what the introduction is saying. So does anyone want to tell me what exactly are they trying to, what is this paper trying to study given this information? It's actually in clear words. Yes, Hanan?
I'm just gonna try it, okay?
Yeah.
It is the statistical documentation of women's involvement in the public sphere.
Yeah, that is definitely part of that. That's one prong of the paper. So there's two different prongs, and that is definitely one of them. So very good. Okay. All right. So Nabiha, do you want to go again? Otherwise, I'll just answer this because I do want to move on as well.
Particularly complex.
Great if you could go for it. Thank
Sorry,
you.
Nabiha?
I think it would be great if you would go for it.
All right, guys. So so basically the answer lies in the last sentence, as it typically does for, you know, when you come across these kind of passages. So it says this paper seeks to analyze the structures that have birthed the discrepancy. So basically, what are the structures, the reasons, the, you know, the maybe the laws, maybe the sort of you know, like the political events or maybe, you know, some sort of biases, right? So these are all different things that are considered structures in the social sciences. And what are those factors basically that created this divide between what we thought was the new Pakistani woman was going to be like, and then what actually ended up happening. So it's a little bit complex, but that is what is being studied. So again, like, you know, one of the participants said, I'm sorry, I forgot exactly who it was, that one of the things that is being studied is, you know, the statistical sort of representation of women in the public sphere. And it is being compared to the narrative. So it's qualitative and quantitative. Sorry, guys, I wrote it, so it's a little bit complicated. I wrote this in undergrad and I didn't word it very well, but just to give you guys an idea. So how does the author want to examine this? I think I already answered it. Does anyone want to give me a guess about which discipline this belongs to?
I think it's politics.
It is politics. It is politics. I actually submitted it to
Comparative
a different
politics?
It's not comparative politics. Because comparative politics is it's more about, you know, you compare like different units, so like either one country to the other country, or you compare you know, one province in one country to another one, or you study the same thing across across, like, you know, different historical junctures, which I guess in a way this could fit into it, but mainly I wrote this for a history paper. So it was a politics and history was kind of interdisciplinary. And the reason I said history was because the way I wrote it, it was very much a historical analysis. I traced the discourse basically about, you know, what people said, how women came out onto the streets, how their idea of, like, you know, parda changed over time, etc. So again, this is something that, you know, when you read a paper, the way it's written and the things it focuses on often addresses like which discipline it also belongs to. All right, guys, thank you so much for your participation. We are going to give you a 10-minute break because we recognize that it's dinner time. So you probably won't be able to have all your dinner, but you're welcome to bring it over here and have it with us. You have 10 minutes to do that.
How about
All
we
right.
do dinner in how about we do the break in 20 minutes? Because I feel like it hasn't even been an hour since we started. What do you think?
Okay.
Yeah?
Okay.
We'll come back to this. Maybe after when we dive into the define your research question after the second example.
Okay, after the second activity. All right, that sounds good, I think.
I just want to recognize over here that really appreciate the participation, really appreciate people trying, because this is not straightforward. I myself had massive imposter syndrome when I first started the research in social sciences, and especially when I first went to college. If anything, I would say consider yourself lucky that you're getting exposure to this right now. And I just want to congratulate each one of you for participating, for trying to keep up, for going through the examples and really thinking about things. This is stuff that you get better at, like almost anything in life you get better at by doing over and over again. So after 4 years of like reading a ton of research papers and writing them, for Ayesha it's like what, 5 or 6 years even, and now she's working as a researcher. So we've gotten
But I'm still a victim of imposter syndrome. So, you know, it's something that we have to work on, but definitely, like, you guys are doing absolutely great. I just want to echo that as well.
One thing I want to encourage is the key is always, especially when you're first getting into the groove of research writing, because this is not like reading a novel or even reading the paper. This is a very different kind of writing and a very different kind of literature. So the key is to read slowly and really try to get each sentence what it's getting at, because believe it or not, the writer has put a lot of thought into every single sentence because they're trying to build an argument. So do try to follow the thread of the argument, and we will be introducing you to how they build that argument in a little bit. But read carefully and, you know, think about how they're connecting the dots throughout the writing. So with that, Ayesha, let's talk about the structure of a research paper.
All right, thank you so much, Bushra. So guys, we're trying to tackle all of the social sciences in this workshop. So the structure of a paper is not going to be the same across all the disciplines, but we are going to introduce you to the general structure of a paper in the social sciences. So you have an abstract at the beginning of your paper, but that is always written at the end because it includes, you know, details about like what your results were and what you found. So it's basically, if people don't have time to read that entire paper, so just by reading that 250-word or 300-word paragraph, they should be able to know what you were trying to find, what methods you used, and what conclusions you reached. And also the keywords. So that's the first part. Then you have the introduction, and the passages you just saw were parts of introductions. Introductions are typically much longer than the passages you saw for a standard paper, but those were examples of introductions. Then you have what is called the literature review. So typically when you're studying a topic, you want to know what has already been, you know, studied about it before. Like, what have other authors looked into, what results have they found? And then you want to situate your analysis and your inquiry in this wider literature. So you have this section of a paper in which you're basically just talking about, hey, this is what everyone else has said about this topic, right? After that, you have the methodology. So you're going to tell your audience, you're going to tell the reviewers, how exactly are you going to answer your question? You know, what is your research question, which we're going to cover afterwards as well. but what methodology are you going to employ? So you could be employing a quant-based, right? So like a quantitative study, it would include maybe a regression analysis, or it could be like an anthropological study. That would be thick description. It's called thick description, in which basically you do an ethnography, you live in a community for like 2 years, and you just describe how they function, day-to-day life. That's a thick description. So that's highly qualitative. And then you have a lot of papers. I think the bulk of papers actually lie in mixed methods. So you have a quantitative element and you have a qualitative element. Anyway, we're not going to go into too much detail with that, but that is the methodology section. After that, you have the results. So you basically tell the audience like what you found after, after conducting your research, your methodology, and then you analyze those results. So depending on how you did it, that analysis and discussion section is going to look different. And then finally, you have a conclusion, which basically reiterates everything that you've done. So moving on. Yeah, Bushra.
So you are a social science researcher now, and now you know how a social science research paper is constructed. You know what the social sciences are. You're ready to write your first research paper. So where do you start? First, we want to begin by helping you take that one giant leap. It's one small step, one giant leap for a research paper. It's called defining your research question. Just click the next arrow, Ayesha, and we will go into the definition of a research question. A research question is the question around which you center your research. Now, it sounds very intuitive. It sounds like, okay, we just have to ask a question. But say you wanted to study the impact of Instagram on how many pictures people take. Unless you make your research question researchable, it's going to be impossible to study. So let's go into what makes asking a research question difficult, but also how do you come to a good research question. So there are 6 things, there are 6 steps you should consider when you're looking at your research question. So basically, one thing you'll see when you're doing research is that you start off somewhere, and by the time you finish your paper and hand it in, you could be quite different from where you began. And that's the whole process of research. You start off by having some idea of the topic and you're curious about it. And by the end of your research, you feel like you have developed understanding in depth of certain concepts in specific areas. So how would you go about defining a research question to get started? So first of all, choose an interesting but general topic. So you want to have a big enough scope when you start so you can start narrowing down. The second thing is you do some preliminary research on your general topic. So you get a sense of what's already out there. What kinds of questions are people asking about it? How are they answering those questions? Third, you consider your audience. Are you writing for high school students? Are you writing for a conference? Are you writing for your professors? Who is going to be reading that paper? 4, then now that you have your question and you know who you're writing for, think about what would they be interested in. So we talked about Instagram and taking photos. Are they interested in what types of photos people are taking? Are they interested in who's taking photos? Are they interested in what they're taking photos of? So what in particular about this topic would interest your audience? 5th is evaluate your question, and we're going to talk about how to do that. And finally, you begin your research. Until you arrive at a good research question, I've actually had hours of conversations with my professors just going about like defining my research question. I found it incredibly difficult as someone who thinks very big picture to come up with a good research question. The more you think it seems, the harder it can be. But believe it or not, coming up with that single well-defined research question can literally make or break your paper. So moving on.
Yeah.
What?
I just want to add over there. I think I have the same issue in, which when I have a course paper to do, I just want to answer everything. I want to look at everything, so if I'm looking at education, I want to look at politics, history, and whatnot. And this is arguably the most difficult part about your paper. The most difficult stage I find is to define the scope of your paper, to ask, what are you actually asking? So I just wanted to echo that.
There was a question in the chat by Javier, a really good question. Is the abstract written at the beginning or the end? And the abstract, is, even Ayesha pointed out, is one of those odd things that you actually put at the top of your paper. So for example, you and I are interested in doing research on something. We want to find good literature on it. We would not read every single paper we come across. We would read the abstract to get a sense of what this paper is about and see if it could help our research. That's one of those things you put at the very top of your research paper, but you write after you've literally done all the work on your actual paper. Why? Because the abstract is basically like a roadmap of your paper. This was my motivation. This was the question I asked. This is how I answered it. These are the results I found. This is the way to complicate a brief discussion I had on my results. So the abstract is basically like a summary. So you've taken the whole trip and now you're coming back and telling people about how your trip was, basically. So you put it at the top of the paper, but you write it once you've ideally done all your work. So moving back into the research question topic, I'll come back to the other questions later. The next slide, please. Oh, I think there's a lag maybe for me. I'm not able to see it. All right, so now that we know how you come up with the research question, how do you know you have a good enough research question? Now pay attention to these bullet points because we'll be using them in our upcoming activity. So a good research question is focused on a single problem or issue. It does not leave me wondering, is bande ka kya focus and what are they trying to actually study? It's very clear to me. So say, for example, in the first example we showed you, it was very clear they're studying problems in the education system in Pakistan. I wasn't thinking that they're talking about the political system or something else. So your research question should also be researchable. For example, I might want to study how plants grow on Mars. Okay? But unless I have the money to buy a probe and like actually go to Mars and get samples, I won't be able to research it. So you have to be a bit realistic and ask yourself, do I have the data? Do I have the means to get the data for my question or not? So that's why the preliminary research helps. Third thing, your research question should be feasible to answer. So for example, suppose I want to talk about how Instagram is affecting humanity. Now that is probably a book series, not just a paper. So my research question, if I'm doing a 10-page research paper, I have to make sure that my research question is defined enough to be able to answer that in that 10-page research paper. The question you will ask for a 10-page research paper will be way more specific than something you would dive into for a whole thesis, right? So what is specific? So the next thing is you have to consider, kind of building off of that, actually maybe even the most important point in my opinion, is your question specific enough? Because if your question is specific enough, it will be focused, it will be researchable, it will be feasible. While you want to say specific, you also want it to be complex enough. So suppose I want to ask the question, what is the problem with education in Pakistan? So I have somewhat of a focus. I know education in Pakistan ki baat ho rahi hai, but it's a very broad topic. And how exactly am I building more understanding of it? So if I say I want to study the primary school education in a specific town or city or village in Pakistan, now suddenly I'm going deep enough to build something to add to the understanding that people have of that question. Lastly, it should be relevant. So for example, I want to understand, if I ask a research question like, does eating gummy bears make pandas happy? Like, who is that relevant to? How is that going to help humanity in any way? So you have to see कि मेरा research paper किसी को पढ़ने में दिलचस्पी होगी भी कि नहीं? Is it relevant enough or not? So again, please keep these words in mind because they will really help you in our upcoming activity. Okay, moving on to the next slide. I think there's a slight lag.
No, I think it's just my computer's
Oh no. Okay, so I just quickly want to go over this. This is not something I really want you to dwell on for this particular workshop, but you should be familiar that depending on what is the purpose and approach of your research paper, your question would differ. So descriptive research paper would look into the characteristics of X. So for example, I want to examine the properties of, I want to examine the culture of people who live in a particular village in Pakistan. So I'm actually going to be looking at describing that. Suppose I'm looking at comparative research, then my research question will be about what is the education system like in Pakistan versus China. And so it's very obvious in that question. Am I looking at correlation? Am I trying to see if there is a relationship between how much rice people eat and how active they are in daily life? So again, a correlation is there. Exploratory research. So that means that you are kind of diving into the specifics of a particular topic. What factors cause X, or what is the role of the prime minister in designing a health policy or something like that? What is explanatory research? Very simple. It's trying to it's different from correlation. In correlation, you're going into, does A cause B? But explanatory, you're trying to see why A causes B. Evaluation research, advantages, disadvantages. And action research is, how can you do this? What are the steps we need to take? So when you're doing a research paper, just give a brief think, what am I trying to do here? Am I trying to find a correlation? Am I trying to describe something? Am I trying to compare? And that will help you develop your research question. I just wanted to go over that very quickly, but not very critical at the same time. Okay, so now let's look at some examples. Ayesha, take it away with the first one.
All right, guys. So can I get any volunteers to read the first example on screen?
We have,
okay, Talha, do you want to go ahead?
Is why are social networking sites harmful?
Okay, since you're reading it out as well, do you want to tell me what's so bad about this research question based on everything that Bushra has just said? Oh, we can't hear you, Talha, or is it just me?
I can't hear Talha either. And usually Talha has great stuff to say, so Talha?
I think it might be a network issue, but we'll definitely take Talha on after he sorts that out. Talha, inshallah, we'll take you on again. Does anyone else want to tell me what's so bad about this research question?
How about asking someone randomly to see who's really paying attention?
All right. Talha, do you want to try and see if your mic is working? Otherwise, I'll call on someone. Okay. All right, let me call on someone. Someone who hasn't spoken yet. Talal, are you there? Are you with us?
Yes.
Sorry, Talal, can you unmute yourself? Okay, I think Talal is also having a few network difficulties. So Rabia Akhtar. Okay, guys, come on. You need to, if you're not. Well,
if people are not responding, we may have to remove them from the workshop because we don't know who they are. But Asma's had her thumbs up for a while, so Asma can tell us what's up with research question.
It's a guess. Like basically, the thing is that people use social networking sites for many things, even for promotions, and it is it's harmful in a way too, but it's much more useful, I guess. And it can be bad because if we do this research, basically it can result as many people, like it can be very, especially during these times, especially during distance learning and because of coronavirus, COVID-19, everyone is very much dependent on social networking sites, and this can be a very disadvantage if we consider it as harmful, because everything depends on that, all the promotions through educational stuff, all the awareness we spread about breast cancer awareness, like previously we did posters and awareness among people about voting in different countries, and about how we have knowledge about so many countries and what's going on in other different countries during these times. So this is all because of social networking sites, and even how we have communication with each other, it's only because as we're not able to meet with each other.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
Yes.
Asma, I love your answer, because I think it touches on a very important point that we might have missed actually, which is when you're doing social science research, you do not want to go in with preconceived notions. You don't want to go in with assumptions, right? So the whole reason you're asking a research question, is because you want to know what the answer is based on scientific evidence, right? And scientific evidence is procured in different ways. It can be quantitative, it can be qualitative. We've covered all of that, but I love what Asma said. It's because, well, maybe it's not even true, right? And I think if you guys attended the critical thinking workshop, you'll realize that this is a huge component of actually coming up with a research question as well. You have to identify, hey, is this even the right question to ask? So I love that, absolutely. I'm just going to go on to the next, to the good example as well, just so we can compare what else are the weaknesses of this question. So we can think about, you know, more along the lines of what we have actually talked about in terms of how specific is it, you know, and how, you know, is it complex enough, and things like that. So can anyone volunteer? Talal, since you've got your hand raised, do you want to read out the good research question and then give me your comments on all of this?
Miss, I want to tell about the disadvantages of social networking sites. Is that cyberbullying?
Yes,
And
absolutely. Absolutely, there are definitely a lot of disadvantages. But for now, since we're talking about, you know, how you could answer that question with proper social science research, let's try to stick to this activity in terms of, you know, what makes a good research.
Misunderstood the activity. The activity is not about answering the question. It has nothing. We're still trying to come up with a good research question. Until you come up with a good research question, you cannot go about answering it. So this is an example. What we're doing over here is comparing examples of bad versus good research questions. So just having a research question for your paper, like why are social networking sites harmful, is not going to help you write a good paper. So here's on the right hand side, you have an example of a good research question. How are online users experiencing or addressing privacy issues on social networking sites like MySpace and Facebook? So Ayesha, what do you think makes this, what is the difference between the bad and the good research question?
All right, well, here are the differences. First of all, you know, you've identified exactly who you're going to be studying. You're going to be studying online users, right? So you're not just talking about like the moral issues of social networking sites. You're talking about what the effects on online users. You've also identified exactly what you're going to be looking at in terms of, you know, which is privacy issues. So now you've narrowed it down a lot to privacy issues for online users. And you've also narrowed it down further to talk about MySpace and Facebook. What this does is it gives you, you know, a good amount, like a good data set, because again, online users experiencing privacy issues in MySpace and Facebook, you're going to have tons of content on this, right? You're going to have a lot of data on this. So to be able to get all of that and make it feasible for you to study that, and also to come out with conclusions that have an impact, so you can have an impact on Facebook's policy or MySpace's policy. So that is what this research paper is going to let you do, instead of, you know, just going at it from like so many different angles, which is the first question. So, okay, let's move on to the next one. Bushra?
Sure. So for the next example, Hamna's had her hand up. Hamna, can you help us read by reading the example on the bad side?
Oh, yeah, sure. How are doctors addressing diabetes in the US?
So Hamna, why do you think this is an example of a bad research question? Why is this a bad research question?
Wait, miss, I need to think it through. I had my hand raised up for the previous one
think back to
because
the
I had
keyword.
time to think it through.
Mm-hmm. So
what?
Actually, can you go back a few slides actually to where we had the list of keywords? So when you're answering whether this is a good or a bad research question, think back to these points. Is that research question focused, researchable, feasible, specific, complex, and relevant? In fact, I would encourage you guys to just put it down in your, if you have a notepad, you should have a notepad or something, write it down on that and come back to this, refer to this for the rest of this activity. All right? So Hamna, you've taken note of these 6 words?
I'm just going to give them a second to take note.
Okay.
All right, okay. I'm going to move back to the activity now.
Yes.
So
Hamna, thinking about what we've discussed, what makes a good research question? It has to be focused, it has to be specific, it has to be a little complex, relevant. What do you think is not so good about this research question?
I think that it is specific, but it's quite generalizing.
Exactly.
For example, how are doctors addressing diabetes in the US? It's talking strictly about US as a whole. It's not quite focused because US is it's a big country, right? So that's why I think this has many flaws because it's too general. People need to have like a set point focus so that they could understand everything. The diabetes part, yes, it does give information that diabetes, it's a well-known illness, but a lot of people are different. Not everyone is the same. Not everyone has like, they haven't gotten diabetes from the same kind of same set. How do I explain this?
I think
they haven't gotten diabetes from.
Go ahead.
Miss, your voice is cutting out. Did you say something?
I was just saying, I think you've begun to think like a social science researcher because I feel like you're getting into that thought process of like.
Oh, I love thinking, Miss.
Wonderful. So do I. So you have a bright future ahead of you, girl. Inshallah.
Oh, thank
so
you.
Let's look at then. So as Hamna pointed out, how are doctors addressing diabetes in the US is a very general question. Also because there's so many ways to address diabetes, right? So it's a very vast topic. Doctors are doing which doctors are we talking about even? So how would you make this research question better? So what are common traits of those suffering from diabetes in America? And how can these commonalities be used to aid the medical community in the prevention of the disease? There's actually quite a complex research question. But what they're saying is, now there are probably a lot of different reasons that why people get diabetes, but we were making this question researchable by focusing on the common traits of those suffering from diabetes and thinking about how we can use those traits, how doctors can address diabetes. So you see, it's more specific. It's not just like we're thinking about all kinds of factors. We're thinking about things that we cannot even study. This the good research question just made this question now way more researchable. All right. So let's go to the next example.
All right. Okay, the next example. I'm going to call on a few people to just make sure you guys are all with us. So do we have Isha with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, Isha, do you want to read this out, please? This research question?
What is the effect on the environment from global warming?
All right, thank you so much. So what are your thoughts on what this research paper is, what this research question is missing and how it can be improved? So did you make a note of the 6 bullet points that we had earlier?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, awesome. Do you want to review them and let me know what you think?
It is very general.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not really specific.
Yeah. So in what way do you think it's not specific? I mean, which part of this could be a lot more specific? Like, for example, like how would I define effect, right? Okay, well, while you think about it, if you want to add something else, please do raise your hand. Until then, we've got Hanan and Talal have raised their hand. So Hanan, do you want to go ahead?
I think it's focused because it's like focusing on a specific topic like global warming.
Okay.
Or environment. I think so, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I agree. I see where you're coming from. So it is definitely, I mean, at least it's, there is some sense of focus. But again, when you're talking about effects on the environment from global warming, yes, it is more focused than some of the other examples we've come across. But this could be, it could be referring to so many different things, right? We haven't localized it. So the effect of on the environment and it could be different in, in the north, it could be different in tropical areas, right? So that's kind of the issue. So even though it is focused, it could definitely do with a lot more specificity. Do you see what I mean?
Yes, I got it.
All right. Okay. Huda, do you want to add anything over here before I move on to the good example? Okay, I think there is. Yeah, I think there was an issue with the mic. All right, guys, no problem with that. I'm just gonna move on to the good example over here. So over here, what you can see basically what the issues were. So it says, how is glacial melting affecting penguins in America? Okay, so over here, you're looking at, you're not just looking at like global warming generally or the effects generally, but you're looking at a specific effect of global warming, which is glacial melting, and the effect it has on a particular unit, right? So when you're doing social science research, you really have to think about what is my unit of analysis, right? Like, what am I actually looking at the effect on, right? And so if I'm thinking the environment, that's not very specific. That is, it's very broad. So it will be difficult for you to find literature on that. If you put that into like Google Scholar, you're going to get tens of thousands of papers. You're not going to be able to go through it. So over here, now you have something very specific. You have penguins, and you also have penguins in America. So not penguins all over, because the effect on them is going to vary depending on the geography, right? So this is kind of what we mean by really narrowing the scope of your paper. It's still complex because there's going to be lots of different effects of glacial melting on penguins in America, but it's going to be able to, it's going to help you make this paper, this question feasible, right? You will be able to answer this in a research question. You won't have to write a book on it. You won't have to dedicate 20 years of your life to studying this. You can do it in a research paper. Okay, so this is kind of very similar to the activity that we're going to be doing. We're just going to have a slide up again. I think we're going to do this together. So, sorry, I'm just looking at our presentation notes as well.
I like what Ayesha, what you just said about Googling, because I think that also helps people understand. So suppose you are writing a research paper, so you probably do for your school assignments. Think about when you're sitting down to Google the question for your research paper. If you put in something like, what is the effect, what are the effects of global warming, you're going to get millions of results, and it's going to take you forever to figure it out. But if you have something specific defined, like global effects of global warming, where, what kinds of effects, what aspect of the environment are we studying, you will get a narrower set of results on Google, and that will help you more quickly be done with the research paper, and also like be able to write something useful, right? Because otherwise you'll end up writing a very general research paper. So do bring that thinking to defining a research question for whatever paper you are writing for, especially when you go into college and you're writing a social science research paper. Yes, so with that, let's jump into this activity. Again, the premise is very simple. Can you tell what a good research question is? So what we're gonna do right now is a bit of a poll. We're gonna put a question, we're gonna put all the questions on this on screen, and we're gonna go through them one by one, and you have to categorize them as good or bad. So what I'm going to suggest we do is, when we go through the questions, we're going to ask you to put on the chat if you think this question is good or bad. As a research question, again, it's not about your personal, do I like this question or not? That's not what we're going for. We're thinking as a researcher, we're very neutral. We're not biased towards the topic or the subject. What we are thinking about is this question a good research question for a research paper? So one, do women have rights in Pakistan? Again, think back to the 6 points. Is it focused, researchable, feasible, specific, complex, and relevant? Right? So let's just do the quick. I love Rihab is so on it. She was just like,
Amen as well.
Amen as well. Let's give you guys like 30 seconds. Maybe just, I'm going to count to 10 and I'm going to see all the responses there. All right, so for the first question, do women have rights in Pakistan? The answer, Fatma, should either be it's good or bad. There's no yes or no here. Good, is this a good research question? Would it make...
I love that Furqan has given his reasoning behind his answer as well.
Yes, please, let's hear your reasoning as well. So I'm just gonna give you guys like 10 more seconds.
So we have a little bit of a difference of opinion over here, but I think generally we are in agreement over here. I would encourage everyone to actually look at Furqan's answer because I really like that answer.
I'm actually going to try to create a poll for the next one, Ayesha, while you discuss this.
All right. Okay, guys. So I'm just gonna start discussing it since we do have quite a few to go through. So thank you everyone for participating. The correct answer is that it's actually not a very good research question. And the reason for that is because it is not focused enough, right? So yes, we are talking about women and rights in Pakistan. Yeah, sure, we haven't talked about women everywhere. But again, you know, what kind of rights, right? And in what time era, and according to who, right? So there is a lot of, like, as you know, in Pakistan, you have lots of different ideologies at play, right? You have, you have people who come from a very conservative background. You have people who come from a very liberal background. So rights, how would you even define rights? Okay, so this is one of the things, again, with social science research that we should talk about is every concept in social science papers, you actually have to define it, okay? Because rights, whatever rights mean to me, might mean something very different to you. So this question does not help us do that. This is very much kind of a yes/no question, according to, you know, whatever popular opinion is, or it's going to be too broad. You're not going to be able to do justice to, you know, according to whom or whatever. So if you break this down a little bit more, it would be a much better research question. So that's all I'm going to say about this one, because we can move on to the next one. Bushra,
Aisha, I feel like our methodology is a little flawed here. Our methodology, or the way in which we're collecting responses, is flawed here, because I think that when some people are being influenced by the others and they're not thinking for themselves because they see the answers in the chat. So what we're going to do now is a vote for the next ones. For question 2, I want people to go onto this, follow this link, and vote whether they think question 2, in what ways have community awareness programs by UNICEF and the World Bank contributed to primary education enrollment in Pakistan? So follow that link and vote if you think it's a good or bad research question.
awesome. So Bushra, are you going to get the results on your screen then for that?
I am, and I'm going to share it, or I can even send you the link, Ayesha, and you can put it up.
Okay.
Do you want to do that?
Or I think you can share. I think I'll stop sharing, and if you share, I think it would be less
Let's do that. Okay. So now I'm going to share my screen.
I hope everyone got a chance to read the question. If not, let me just put it in the chat.
We have 12 votes, and they're all kind of going for the same thing. It's interesting. I think our students are getting the hang of this, and I'm very excited.
And that's good. This is just the second question.
All right.
Basically, I got into it after the third example because it was much more clearer than the first two.
Okay, that's good. See, this is why you should always have more than one example.
Exactly. So I think people are finally beginning to
basically when Ma'am Bushra said that if you Google it, so you'll get a million searches. So you have to be like a bit focused on the areas and perspective. That's all.
Exactly. Yes. It's just really just that. And I think people have also realized कि अगर सवाल थोड़ा लंबा हुआ तो इसका मतलब थोड़ा focused है. I think people are kind of catching on to certain cues.
Basically.
Which is good. So everyone is unanimous. No one thinks it's a bad research question. Why? Can someone raise their hand and tell me why they think it's a good research question, though? While I set up the poll for the next one.
I'm gonna share the questions on the chat because Bushra is sharing her screen. So all right, guys, we want a few people giving us feedback before I share the third question.
Why do you think it's a good research question?
Okay, so we do have raised hands. Rehab, do you want to go ahead?
Yes, it's very focused because it's if the question just stopped at contributed, it would not make a really good question because it wouldn't be like really focused. But it is like really focused, and it asks us that where is it contributing, and it's also feasible and relevant.
Very, very good. I'm Really loving that people are catching on to those terms and understanding them. Give me just a second. Maybe this could be like a second's break. What I'm doing is I'm basically transferring this whole activity onto the direct polls. I'm also putting the sentences there. And that way people can just pull through the whole thing. And
that would be great. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, I'm going to save it here for now.
So guys, I think one of the lessons from this is that you might start out with thinking that, one of your methodologies is correct, but as you get into your research and you start reading the literature and you start seeing your results, you might realize that, hey, I need to change up the methodology. And that is the beauty of social science research. So just keep that in mind as well.
So guys, are you able to see question 3 on the poll? Anyone?
It's all right, Huda. If you want to interact just through text, that's fine. If it's a network issue, it's not a problem. We hope you stay with us.
We can see the polls.
Awesome. So answer the third one while I just finish creating the rest of it. Ooh, interesting. I'm loving this now. I'm really loving it. Just need a few more responses. There are 20 students here, but only 13 participants, and I'm very worried. Zahid, do we have some robots with us here today? Is that what's happening?
So far, we don't have any robots, but with the passage of time, these students are turning into a robot.
That I would really like to see 20 answers to this question. So anyhow, let me quickly share my screen. I can actually I'm going to pull this out so you can see the poll results. Unsurprisingly, maybe people think it's a bad research question, but what I'm curious to know is, and I see a lot of hands being raised as to why this is a bad research question.
Before someone answers, I just want to know that is there a reason that someone could not, participate in the voting? I mean, can we help them in any way? Because out of 20, if 13 people have participated, there might be an issue with any one of them, or maybe many of them. So is there an issue that any one of you is having in terms of going to this website and voting? Please, whoever has any challenge in terms of voting, please let us know so that we can help you. And if not, we strongly encourage you to go and participate. Thank you.
All right, thanks for that, Zahid. Thank you so much. You're absolutely right. So Zahid is our technical volunteer and also cybersecurity IT expert. So if you're facing any issues, please do talk to him. Okay, so we'll do one more question, and I think people understood. I think you guys are really getting onto what is a research question. So I'm just going to get on the 4th question. Are you all able to see it? Let's see if we're able to.
Yes, we can.
Fantastic. Let's see. Answer it, and then we'll see the results here.
Guys, I do want to give you a hint that this is a trick question. It's going to challenge some of the things you might have used to understand this. You really have to think about this one. And see, that's why we're having such mixed responses, because it is a trick question. Keep that in mind.
And to make Zahid proud, we need
to make Zahid proud. Everyone should
be participants in this question just to make Zahid proud. There's definitely a wrong answer, but just because you answer wrong doesn't mean that you're wrong, because we're all here to learn.
We're neck and neck at 50%. This is amazing.
Also 17 participants. We have met our goal.
Wow, amazing, guys. Honestly, we really want to thank you for participation and for this engagement.
So Ayesha, what do we do now? You know what? Okay, let's do it. Ayesha versus Bushra. I'm going to argue this is a good research question, and Ayesha has to like debate with me as to why this is a bad research question. All
I'm
right.
on the team of Bushra.
I think this is a great research question because first of all, it's very long. And I've come to realize that if it's very long, it's a good research question. All right.
Going equal so far.
Secondly, it's very specific. Like, see, it says COVID-19, so we know we're talking about a specific issue. International students, our audience is kind of defined, and it's even covering a time period. So I think it's very well thought out. But Ayesha, what do you think?
Same thing.
Okay, cool. This is, it's fair because you have got 9 people, you've got half the team on your side, but representing half the team that is on my side, I think, and now I've got one up, I think that the issue with this question, it's got to do with critical thinking. So you have to look at the content of the question as well. COVID-19, the unit of analysis, right? Or not, this is not the unit of analysis, this is the independent variable. COVID-19 itself is a very unpredictable thing right now. Okay, we do not know. Ever since March, it's gone in all kinds of ways that we haven't predicted, and the effects on international students are as yet, changing day by day. So how are we able to answer the question, what are the effects going to be in the year 2025? I don't think it's a good research question because I don't think it's feasible. So it might be specific, it might be focused, but I don't think it's a feasible question.
So besides the fact that Ayesha accused me of not being a critical thinker, I think she is absolutely right, because even though it's a nice detailed research question, it's not very relevant. It's very relevant. It's not very researchable. So for that reason, it's not a good research question. So I think, okay, let's do maybe one more. And I think this time what we want to do is make sure everyone gets the right answer. So my bet is we're going to get like 90% people getting the right answer on this one, because now people know what a good research question is and they're going to write amazing research papers. So guys, one last question and we go into a break. All right, here we go.
And we had 19 votes, so this time let's aim for 20 votes. Let's try to aim for 100%.
We are being ambitious. I think, yeah. Can you guys see the choices?
No.
It's not giving you the choices?
No.
Oh,
do you want me to put them on for?
People are not able to vote. I'm so annoyed. Let me try putting this. Oh wait, I think I did something wrong. There you go. Are you able to see them now?
Yes.
Come on, guys.
20 participants. Just for Zahid.
I think you were the special ingredient. I think you asked them to make you proud, and we had 19 participants. So I think the loyalties lie with you.
I think now they understand how it works, and I'm happy to see the numbers going up.
I'm a little concerned because I did say a while ago, just because it's long doesn't mean it's a good research question. I'm a little worried right now, but Ayesha, well, we have to reach 20 participants. So come on, guys. We're gonna give it like 10 more seconds.
I mean, Bushra, the thing is, in the previous question, they were talking about year 2025, which we were not able to estimate. But over here, we have actually gone through this scenario already because of COVID-19 lockdown, we can actually estimate it. So I think
these students are very gutsy. They're challenging the workshop lead. I am terrified.
I love that. I think that is the essence of social science research. You guys are all going to become social science researchers. That is the essence, challenging authority. Guys, I mean, you're right on track, guys.
It's so
I love it.
And so like well said argument. We need one more vote. Okay, but I think the rest of the people here are volunteers. Volunteers are allowed to vote, by the way. Zahid, have you voted? Okay, that is voted.
I did.
All right. So Ayesha, what do you think? Is this a good or bad research question?
I think you guys are spot on, despite the fact that we tried to trick you, but it is a very good research question.
I have a question on that actually.
Okay.
Yes.
So if I look at that, I think it's too broad. You know, they are talking about, okay, so if I go back to the question,
Wait, let
it
me share
talks
my.
about within a question, it is trying to address, you know, so many things. It is talking about, you know, the social aspect of it, I'm not sure. I mean, if I can see the question again.
Wait, I'm trying to.
Social effect, the economic effect, and
Yeah,
on the
so
low
that's
income people.
Put them in the. I put it in the chat. That's what I. Okay. Or Aisha is sharing her screen. I also put it in the chat. So that
yes. So
actually raises an excellent point.
it is talking about economic, you know, challenges. It is talking about social challenges. It is talking about mental health. So how do we limit the scope of a research? Is there a technique? You know, maybe, you know, people voted yes, and we can argue that this is a good question because it has a particular time period. It has, you know, your low income families that are being focused upon. But is there a technique that we can use to limit the scope? Because now by looking at it, I'm just thinking that I have to look at it from economic perspective, from other perspectives. So I may lose the focus. I may not be able to get enough data or enough literature to refer. So that's the whole point. Thank you. And
Yeah,
I am asking, and sorry, I'm asking this question because now I am with the students. They made me proud.
Yeah, Bushra, do you want to answer that or?
I think Zahid has raised an excellent point, and this is something that I would want to maybe when I start my research think about how can I specifically focus. But one thing I would want to point out is the intersectionality between the issues. So, for example, how mental health challenges could be contributing to economic issues, and maybe we want to kind of see the correlation pattern here as well. But say I'm an economics researcher, I would want to maybe focus on the economic aspect. I'm a sociology researcher, I may want to focus on that. If I'm trying to see the correlation, I may. So there are definitely ways to narrow this question further. And you could just decide to specifically focus on mental health challenges, for example. But despite that, I think as a starting point, it's a pretty solid question because maybe you don't know yet what you can collect data on exactly, but you have a very definite audience. You're looking at a very specific factor and you're examining it, you're thinking about which could be good for it. But I agree with Zahid that you could narrow it further, which is another discussion Aisha and I were having for this. Is like there are some research questions that are just bad, like why do wars happen? Like it's not a research question. It's an essay. You could write an argumentative essay on it, but wouldn't be a research paper. But then there's some questions that can just be improved, right? For example, even the diabetes example, I feel like the research question could be improved further. It could be made more specific. But what we have is a good starting point. So that's why we spend so much time on this, guys, because you have no idea. Hopefully one day, inshallah, you will have the idea that coming to a good research question, unless you do that, and you might end up spending 50% of your research time actually just kind of getting more specific on your research question and making it more relevant and interesting.
It definitely changes as you go further. You know, you do more research and you realize, you know, that there might be too much information or too little information. You're going to have to narrow things down or maybe broaden your scope. So it's definitely not set in stone, but the important thing is that you need to have a good question going in that gives you a framework for your research. But it's by no means, nothing is finalized until you're done with the paper. So just remember that as well. So guys, thank you for sticking around. Bushra, should we go into our break for now?
We should, but I'm really tired. It's an hour and a half. So Aisha, why should I come back?
Because guys, after you've asked a research question, what do you do then? How do you actually argue, right? What are the next steps to writing the rest of the paper? At the moment, you've just covered how to ask a good question. And that's the research part, but this is a research writing workshop, and how you're gonna write the rest of the paper is what we're gonna cover after the break.
Can I just ask a question, please?
Yeah, sure. We're here while you guys take a break, so go ahead, ask your question.
So what is the difference between a research paper and an article?
I think that's one of the next slides, right, Aisha?
It might be. I'm not sure. Is it? Well, it depends on what you're talking about. If you're talking about, okay, guys, for the rest of you, if you do want to go on your break, you can. because we do want to come back as well, but I'll just answer this question. And when you're talking about an article, you can be talking about an article at many different places, right? So if you're talking about an article on like a news article, so that's very different, obviously. If you're talking about an article on just some generic online magazine, it's not going to be research heavy. It's not going to be as structured. But when you're talking about an article in an academic journal, so for example, you know, in the initial slides, when we shared some of the popular ones, we had the names of the journals. So there's a journal called, you know, World Politics, or there's a journal called Comparative Politics. I'm sorry, those are the ones I know. But if you have an article in there, then that is a research paper. So it's the same thing. But article is a very generic term that can apply to lots of different pieces of writing. So we're referring to this as a research paper, so you know exactly what kind of writing we're talking about.
Also for articles, you don't necessarily have to do anything.
Thanks so much.
You don't have to. So you just do like some, you go to the internet, you'll go through some sources and you put some arguments together. But even if you're doing a literature review, and for a research paper, you would have to kind of analyze it in depth and add some original thought to it. So a research paper is definitely more complex than an article.
Okay,
I'm going
thank
to take
you.
a few minutes to fill my water bottle. Can you hold the fort while I do that?
Yes, I can, definitely. All right, and the rest of you, like if you do want to go grab your dinner, let me just actually make this much bigger so I can see all of you. At least those of you who have your cameras on. And maybe after you have your dinner, you would want to turn your camera on and engage with us a little bit more. Oh. I might be talking to the void right now, but I can see Asma sitting over there, so.
Aisha, I actually have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Like as Zahid, he asked a question about article writing and research writing, the differences. So I just want to know, what are the differences in the purposes, like of research writing and article writing? What purpose what purpose do they have? Like I think because like in research writing, like are we like writing it for persuading people or convincing them? Like what's the actual purpose?
Right. So, you know, when you have generic articles on like more popular sites, those are mainly like opinion pieces. So that is when you believe in something and you want to convince people. But research writing, the idea isn't to convince people. The idea is inquiry. Okay, so the idea is to ask a question and find the answer to it, and finding the answer in a scientific way, right? So the reason you have this entire structure is so that you can defend it by saying, I went out and did the work to find the answer. So the audience, when you're writing for a research paper, is actually the intellectual community, kind of, you know, within that discipline, right? So you are adding to knowledge. That is the purpose. For research papers, you are adding to knowledge. And you can't just add to knowledge by he said, she said. You know, if I say something and you say something else, we can't add to knowledge that way. The only way I can add to knowledge is by saying that, hey, look, I went out and I interviewed these people, or I looked at all of this data and I performed an analysis of it, or I spent 2 years living with this community and this is what I found. And so now I'm adding to the knowledge that we have about this topic in this discipline. So the audience is actually narrower for research papers because not everyone reads research articles because they're lengthier and they're more complex. But the idea is to basically expand what we know about the world. Whereas other articles, they're just about, you know, this is my opinion.
I take the point now that articles are basically based on opinion, whereas research is based on actual scientific evidence, and it's basically actually about the truth.
Yeah,
Thanks
exactly.
so much.
Okay, sorry, Ma'am Ayesha, if I'm disturbing, but I have a question related to the sample research questions, which is part number 4.
Ayesha, do you want to take a break and I'll take over?
Don't worry, I'm good. But if you can answer the question if you want, but I'm here. Go ahead, Furqan.
Okay. So the question says, what effects will COVID-19 have on international students in the year 2025? So I just on the poll I said it is a good question. So like maybe most of the people or most of the students other than me, they might have said no. So can you please tell me if this is a good question or a bad question, and on what basis is it a good question or a bad question?
Can I answer that question?
Yes,
sure.
Because it's like really fun.
Let me eat my shrimp.
Actually, like you can see how the COVID is changing every day, and we don't really for sure know what is happening, and it's like so unpredictable. So we don't even know what's gonna happen in the next month or next few weeks. So how can we predict in the next 4 years that how it's going to affect us? Maybe by then it won't even be there, or maybe it's like a maybe is there and there's no maybe in a research paper. So that is why it's a bad one, because it's not it is focused, but it's not feasible, I guess, and you don't have enough facts to write a research paper on this question.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much. But the thing is that because the on scientific side, the scientists say that the COVID-19 will stay with us as the common flu or the fever. So basically, we could estimate about it, I believe.
Yeah, but then it's not like as you can see, every week or every once a week they have a new fact. Like from scientific way, they have a new thing or a new theory about it. Because if you see, the scientists themselves aren't sure about it, because they are coming. If you go and check how COVID came or how it's affecting or what are the symptoms, it's changing since it happened. It's changing, and it's changed a lot. So if
Yeah,
it's
that's
still
true. That's
changing,
true.
yeah. So what? So we can say that by 2025 it will change a lot.
Oh,
So
can I add something to this?
yeah, sure. Go ahead, Hamna, and then
I
I'll.
think that because COVID, it's more or less dependent on human behavior, how they're interacting, to whom they're interacting to, and how often they are. And human behavior is quite unpredictable because there are so many of us. So when it comes to COVID, I think it's very unpredictable in that sense. It's very hard to predict, if that makes sense, because of course there are a lot of people. Even if there are laws enforced on people, they will still rebel because that's just how we are.
Yeah.
So if there were normal circumstances, if COVID didn't exist, then I think it would be much easier to predict because the flow state of life would be just going on as it is for the past, like how it's been for the past 100 years or so.
Yeah, so definitely. I mean, look, so social sciences is about predicting human behavior, and there are ways to do that. But the issue with this, even though we do have, from the scientific, the hard sciences field, and epidemiology and stuff like that, we do have sort of predictions about what COVID is going to look like in the coming months and maybe even coming years. But over here, the question is, how is it going to affect international students? It's a little bit too specific to say. Okay, so I know we said that, for a good research question, it should be specific, but over here, it's just, how are you going to get that information? It's you're not going to get enough data for this question, right? So, I mean, we could even do an exercise, like, for example, if you wanted to answer this question for Khan, how do you think, what would be the first thing that you would go about to look at this? Just say that you could, because I might be wrong, right? So say that you could answer this. How would you go about answering this?
Yeah, you're right. It seems to be a bit difficult now for me to answering it. So I would say that like because of the ups and downs, so it would not like categorize to a single point. Maybe it could go for better for the international students, so it could go worse. So now I'm getting it more now.
Yeah.
It's not a
So
good
yeah,
thing.
definitely. I mean, maybe we could have like some answers, but it would probably not be enough to write a research paper on, like a full length paper. We might not have enough data. We might not have enough accurate models to be able to write a full length paper on it. That's my view, but maybe some
Thank you
genius will
so
crack
much.
the code. Maybe some
Thank you
genius will
so
crack
much.
the code and be able to answer that. It's going to require a lot of interdisciplinary research though, with the hard sciences.
Can I add something in what Hamna said?
Yes, sure, Asma.
It's Rehab.
Oh, sorry, Rehab. Sorry.
I would like to add,
It's okay.
but I would continue after Rehab.
Okay, sure.
Actually, Hamna, you spoke about human behavior and we can predict that. But then, like, if at the beginning of COVID, it was very predictable, to be honest, that, like, for example, like we have been in lockdown and everyone was like, for following strictly all the rules and everything. And they were isolating themselves. But then over the time, people got just so sick of it that they just, they're more careless about it and they don't really care. And they're like, jo hoga dekha jayega. So it's like and the COVID actually doesn't really depends on human behavior, because it depends on what COVID is. And yeah, it's gonna like prevent a lot of things if we just isolate and keep ourselves safe and follow the rules. But then it's about how we're going to get treated, and we need the facts to write this research paper, because it's telling that how it's going to affect us as students. So we have to know that if it's curable or not, and how bad is it going to get. And it has a lot of a lot of points and a lot of facts that we need, that we still don't have. So it doesn't really depends on human behavior or how predictable it is or not.
There's a lot of different factors, definitely.
Actually, the thing is, there are so many factors acting on this right now. Like, first of all, the scientists are trying to find antidotes on this. And basically, like, I would like to give a really silly example. It's like, for example, if you ask yourself a question that, oh, what would I eat on 18th December? But the thing is, basically, there's so many factors that, okay, if you might be healthy and you could have a cheat day, you could eat a burger instead. But if you have some health issues, then obviously you need to eat diet food and stuff. So it's like there's so many factors affecting that you cannot predict anything which will happen in the future, because at any moment what happened, like what if after another minute we start showing symptoms, or like we cannot predict the future. Whereas like in the previous question where they already mentioned that how they were facing like mental, economic issues and social issues during COVID-19 lockdown, it's because we have actually gone through that stuff, so we can actually estimate how we were feeling and express that. So I think that's why that question was good, and this question is bad.
Absolutely. Guys, I love this discussion, but we do have to move on. So our break is over. Thank you everyone for engaging. It just makes me so happy, honestly. Like, I absolutely love it. But I will stop fangirling over you guys.
Yeah.
And
actually, most of us are from the same class here, and we didn't know we were gonna be here.
Yes,
And that's why it's like more interacting.
That's
Oh, wow.
good for us.
And you both make it so interesting, to be honest.
Aw, thank you guys. Thank you so much. We're lucky to have you guys here because you're part of this entire thing. All right, so let's move on to the stages of writing. Bushra, I think I'm covering this, right? Yeah, sorry. We have notes on the side. All right, guys. So basically now you have asked your research question, right? But what else goes into actually writing a paper? So the first thing is brainstorming. And I think that's kind of the part that we've been on. It is part of the brainstorming stage. So, like Bushra said, that you have to you initially think about like a generic topic of your interest, and then how you start narrowing that down. So we've maybe consider that the letter A, we've covered that. Okay, we've covered how to brainstorm, right? Something that we care about, something that's relevant to our field, something that's going to have implications, how to narrow it all down. We've done that. The next part that you have to do is actually research. So we're not going to go into a ton of detail like we did with the brainstorming part, but let me tell you that, and I don't know if you guys are aware, I certainly wasn't aware of this when I was in high school, of Google Scholar. Can I get a raise of hands to see how many people are aware of Google Scholar? Okay, good. So for those of you who are not, basically it's like Google, but it is for academic papers. Okay, so these things that we're talking about, we're talking about things that have research behind them, are backed, right? So it's not fake news. It is stuff that is actually backed by like hard work and research. And you want to find that kind of stuff, so you go to Google Scholar. It's a database of like a ton of research papers on all kinds of different subjects. If you want to narrow your search down a little bit more, when you go into university, you're going to get access to like different databases, which are, again, they're a little bit more narrower than Google Scholar, but they take these journals that we're talking about and they bring them all in one place and you search on them. So you're searching in a place where you know you're going to get a lot of information on a certain discipline. Okay, so some of them are more generic, like ProQuest Central. I'm not going to go into too much detail about it, but then there are some that are just for anthropology. In fact, recently, Bushra, I'm going to share it with you. I came one for education and I absolutely loved it, even though education is not my field. But just to be able to put keywords in and know that all the results that are going to come up are going to be about education, I was so excited. So I still have to explore that. But these are the kind of things that you can do to do research. Okay, so that's where you get your literature from, where you do your literature search. Then if your research has a fieldwork component or something else, you know, you would probably gather like numbers, or you would go out into the field, conduct interviews, you would maybe have focus groups. So there's a lot of different ways to do your research. You're going to do your primary research as well. If you're writing a history paper, that might mean going to the library and taking out like old documents and, you know, going through them, right? That's also primary research. So there's different ways to do that. Then after that, what you have to do is you have to structure it. And in terms of structuring, you will follow the structure that we shared with you earlier. You're going to get these slides as well, so you'll be able to, you know, refer back to that. You'll have your generic structure, but within that, what you're going to do when you do your research, you're going to come across lots of different themes within your paper. So you have a topic, and then when you do your research, you're going to say, hey, there's theme A, theme B, theme C, right? Or for example, in one of the questions we said, we're looking at, you know, how UNICEF and World Bank are, you know, contributing to childhood enrollment in primary schools. So you would first talk about UNICEF, you would then talk about World Bank, right? Or it depends on your research. That comes after that. Then you're gonna come up with your thesis statement. Now your thesis statement, and we're going to cover this, it's a very essential part. Your thesis statement basically answers your research question. So once you've conducted your research in response to the research question, you write out a thesis statement, and that is basically what your argument is for that paper. So what exactly are you arguing in this paper? And it also reflects the structure. Okay, so once you've come up with the structure, you're going to add. So by looking at factor A, factor B, factor C, it can be concluded that yada, yada, yada. Okay, that's going to be your thesis statement. It doesn't always have to be one sentence long. Sometimes it's 2 sentences long, depending on the complexity of your paper. And then you're going to, again, go in with a more detailed outline of your paper and write it. And the last part is referencing, because obviously you're going to be borrowing from, you know, like people. You're gonna be referring to other scholars, so you have to make sure that you reference their work. And we're going to talk about that in the final slide as well. So those are the stages briefly. Bushra, over to you.
So we will be sharing these slides after the workshop, and one day, inshallah, when you're writing your own research papers and you're confused about what to do, please feel free to refer to that slide and think about what stage you're at. So now that we've talked about what a research question is, we're going to skip that research phase, because that's something you do individually, and we're going to get to that really important stage where you actually start writing. When you're ready to write, what's the first thing you do? You start with the thesis statement. Now, what is a thesis statement? Ayesha, if you just click next.
Oh, sorry.
So a thesis statement is a sentence. It's one sentence, sometimes 2 sentences, that sum up the central point of your paper or essay. It usually comes near the end of your introduction. So why is this thesis statement so important? Basically, it's a summary of your key arguments. So it goes over your topic, what are your key arguments, how did you answer them, and what is the conclusion? So it's 1 or 2 sentences that really sum it all up, and basically it gives you the whole structure of your paper as well. So let's dive deep and understand this word for it. The word thesis itself, Aisha, correct me if I'm wrong, thesis means argument, right? Or something along. Thesis means a key argument. So when we say a thesis statement, it's like your key argument statement or your key statement for the paper. Okay, so we started with the idea of a research question. Now, when you come up with a research question, generally, even though we'd like to say we're neutral, we have an idea in our mind. So we're talking about the impact of the mental health challenges of COVID-19 on low-income families in the UK. Now, generally, we would assume that there have been some negative mental health challenges. Like, we know that intuitively we're like, kuch to hua hoga. So how do we move from that stage? Are we ready to write a thesis statement right then? No, we're not, because we've not done our research. So when you start off with your research question, you basically do have a hypothesis. What is a hypothesis? Can anyone here, a student, quickly tell us what they understand by the word hypothesis? I see Furqan, Hamna, you go for it. What's a hypothesis? Hamna, did you want to answer that? Furqan, did you want to answer that?
Yeah, I would like to answer that.
Okay, actually, just one second. You've spoken a lot. Fatma just raised her hand. Fatma, did you want to answer that question?
Yes, a hypothesis is basically a supposition on like a limited amount of knowledge.
Wow, that was a really good definition. That was better than what I was going to come up with, which was just a guess. I was going to say it's a guess, but you're absolutely right. It's an assumption based on the knowledge you have in the current moment, but you're not saying that it's fact, right? It's what you're walking into. It's an argument you're walking in with. Thanks for giving Fatma the floor, Furqan. Really appreciate it. I really appreciate your cooperation. So when we're writing our thesis, we start off with a research question, and which gives us a hypothesis, and then we do our research. And once we've done our research and kind of reached a conclusion, then we start off with our thesis statement.
Sorry.
Let's get on to the next slide after that.
Sorry about that.
No. Before that, I think there are a couple of slides before this.
Oh my God. Hold on. Sorry, guys. Technical issues. This is the next slide.
Okay, go for it. I think actually this is yours. What is a strong thesis statement?
All right, guys. So, like we talked about our research question, what makes a strong research question? We have the same thing with our thesis statements. So there's certain ways to judge this. I would really recommend you guys take a note of this or a screenshot of it, because it's going to help you with the next activity. So just going through it briefly, first of all, it has to directly answer your research question, right? So when I see your research question, which by the way, you're probably going to include in your paper as well, I should be able to link it to the thesis statement. It should be the answer to that question. Second of all, it has to make a claim that can be disputed. So what does that mean? It has to be falsifiable. That's what's, falsifiability is discussed in the hard sciences. But basically, your thesis statement cannot be an absolute truth that everyone agrees with anyway, because then why are you writing the paper? Okay, so it's not, the idea isn't to say something that, and convince people that this is the absolute truth. It is supposed to be an argument that other people can say, I have a counter argument for, because that is how knowledge progresses, right? Because people dispute it, and then they do the research to back their claims, and then we move closer and closer, an inch closer and closer to whatever the truth is. So make sure that your thesis statement is not just a fact that everyone agrees with anyway, because otherwise there's no need for the paper. It has to be specific, right? So it shouldn't be like a short generic sentence. It has to give me exactly like the details of what you looked at to be able to arrive at that conclusion. And if you do that, it would act as a roadmap to the paper. So it would reflect the structure of your paper. And finally, it's usually a sentence that is at the beginning of your paper, but at the end of your introduction. So for most papers, if you're looking for the thesis statement, go right to the end of the introduction. That isn't, like an absolute rule. Sometimes it's in different places, but typically it should come right at the end of your introduction. And so even if you're looking at a paper and you want to know exactly what the argument is, that's a good way to go by it. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go through some good and bad examples like we did with the research questions. So can I have a volunteer to read out the first first thesis statement? Rehab, please can you read it out?
Everyone should exercise.
Okay, Rehab, tell me what's wrong with this sentence as a thesis statement?
I have no idea.
I think Nabiha has just raised her hand.
All right, Nabiha.
First up, I would go with it's not really a specific answer. Like it has a direct answer to it, but this claim can be disputed because not everyone can do exercise because there are some people who are older than us or who have health problems who couldn't exercise at some point. So I would disagree with this, and it's also not a very strong claim.
Right. Okay. So the idea is that, you know, if something can be disputed, it's actually a good thing for a thesis statement, but you should be able to dispute it, even if you disagree with it, you know, like we could disagree with a thesis statement and it could still be a really good thesis statement. But while you should be able to dispute it, it should provide the reasoning for why it is claiming that, right? So everyone should exercise. It should tell me why exactly, like what research they've done to be able to come to that claim, right? So based on, you know, like health data from the WHO covering, you know, 30 years in Oman, for instance, it shows that you know, healthier, like more exercise rates are correlated with or associated with better health outcomes, in, or like longer life expectancy or something like that. Okay, so I just made that up on the spot, but basically that would give me an idea. Sorry, I didn't have to do that because there's the next one. It just shows you that. So it says Americans should add exercise to their daily morning routine because it not only keeps their bodies at a healthy weight but also reduces the risk of high blood pressure. So it tells you exactly what you know, exercise does. And so even though I can dispute it and I can go like, you know, no, people don't need to exercise, this is giving me an idea of where they're coming from, what the argument is based on. Okay. All right, let's move on to the next example.
All right, so for this one, I'm actually going to enlist the support of a volunteer. Rabia, are you still here?
Yes, I'm here.
Awesome. Can you help us by reading the example?
Sure. Reading can develop a child's analytical mind.
What do you think, Rabia? What do you think of this thesis statement? It's bad, but why?
It's not good enough.
What makes you say that?
Like it's good. It says that reading can develop a child's analytical mind. So it's basically focused on something specific. The benefits of reading on a child's analytical mind.
But what do you think makes it bad?
But it's bad because it's like it's not good enough. We can elaborate it further, and we can further write how can exactly reading benefit a child's mind.
Exactly. So even though it's giving us an argument that can be disputed, it's not telling us how the person writing the paper arrived at that argument. What methodology did they use? What were they studying? What was the research question? Even I cannot tell. So because of
So
that,
basically, Ma'am Bushra, you're saying that what were their observations, right?
not really. What I want to understand is how did they come to this argument? So let's look at the good version of this particular example. So the good version, I think, Talha, did you just speak or was it Furqan?
Yeah, it was me, Furqan.
Furqan, can you go ahead and read the good example?
Yeah, good. Reading develops a child's mind by fostering comprehension skills, increasing vocabulary, and exposing them to new worlds they might not otherwise encounter.
So from this thesis statement, I can tell how this person studied this topic. What exactly were they examining that led them to come to this conclusion? I get a sense of what they were researching. Now, some thesis statements might say a bit more, definitely, than others, but still, as a thesis statement, this sticks. It's an argument that directly answers a research question. Research question like, how does reading develop a child's analytical mind? By fostering comprehension skills, increasing vocabulary, etc., makes a claim that can be disputed. It's specific enough so I know what we're talking about. Reading for whom, a child, how we have that in there. It is a roadmap to the paper in the sense that I know what factors are being examined, and if it comes at the beginning of the paper, then it's in the right place. So by that, those measures is a good example. Let's move into the next one really quick.
I think there was a question.
Oh, question. Yes.
Yeah, so basically, how can we dispute this or any other hypothesis? How can we dispute any hypothesis if we want to?
Basically, what you mean by being this is disputable is that it's not saying that we can be like, maybe you did not examine this particular aspect of, developing a child's mind. Maybe you didn't think about the behavioral effects. Maybe you didn't think about um, the fact that if someone reads a lot, there may be some wealth factor involved. There may be some economic factors involved that give them access to reading materials. So you can look at the core argument and be like, this is something that I can question in some ways, because you know what the person is doing here. They're looking at how reading develops a child's mind. So you can question the correlation. You can question the factors itself. That's what we mean by disputable. So, for example, if someone says that the sky is blue.
I was going to use that example. I was just going to say that.
It's like,
even if someone says by observing the sky in 7 different continents and and has like a 3-line sentence telling you that the sky is blue, that's a trash thesis statement because everyone already knows that.
Or
Yeah.
like something as simple as COVID-19 led to the loss of millions of lives. Like, okay, why did you write this research paper? We all have access to the counter one Google search away, right? So like, your thesis statement has to make an argument about something that we can discuss, basically, is what we're saying when it comes to thesis statements. Right?
Yep.
Let's look at a few
Thank you
more
so
examples.
much.
No worries. Look at a few more examples. Ayesha, you want to take on this one?
Sure. So do I have any volunteers to read this out and tell me what's wrong with it? Nabiha, go ahead. Nabiha, are you there?
How about
Okay.
we go with someone who hasn't spoken? Warda? Warda, can you read this bad statement for us? I'm beginning to wonder.
Hey, yes.
Okay, thanks, Warda.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Organ donors should be financially compensated.
Okay, thank you. So what's up with this thesis statement? What's going on over here?
I'll have to think about it.
Okay, take your time.
Maybe someone can read the good statement in the meantime, and then Warda can tell us what she sees as a difference there.
Yeah.
So who wants to
Can I
read
do
the
that?
good statement?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so
Oh, wait, sorry, Nabiha. Javeria just raised her hand. I feel like she hasn't spoken. So thank you for giving space. Javeria, do you want to go ahead?
Yes. Given the grueling surgery and lifelong changes they endure, kidney donors should be financially compensated for the act of self-sacrifice.
Okay, awesome. So let's bring Warda back. Have you thought about it? You've thought about the differences?
I have. The good statement is just long and.
Well, it is longer, but there's definitely, I assure you there's something else going on over there as well.
Yeah, I think the good statement is more specific and detailed.
In what way?
In what way?
What extra details does the good statement have?
The good statement is has mentioned about the kidney donors. They have specified the organ, and in the bad statement, it just they have not specified the organ.
That's one thing. But also the bad statement is just saying something should be like that. Now, it's when you're writing a thesis or when you're writing a research statement, it's a research paper, you should avoid words like can, should, things like that suggest something that are like kind of like you're kind of just suggesting something. You should have reasons for whatever you're saying. So that's what makes a good statement good, because it's saying, given the grueling surgery and lifelong changes they endure, it's explaining what findings the researcher had that led them to come to that conclusion. And that's why that thesis statement is better than organ donors should just be financially compensated. Like that thesis statement leaves a lot to be desired. Okay, so I think our activity will actually give us a much better sense of what is going on. But before we dive into that really quickly, I want to give you guys a sense of how you can help yourself write the thesis statement. And one way to do that is to consider what kind of paper you're writing. Not all research papers have the same focus. For example, for the research question we talked about, sometimes you're looking at a correlation, sometimes you're looking at describing something, sometimes you're looking at explaining a phenomenon. So similarly, when you're writing a paper and you're thinking about how to frame your thesis statement, think about what kind of paper you're writing. There are three main kinds of research papers. One is analytical, one is expository, and the third is argumentative. So let's go into the first one, analytical. An analytical paper breaks down an issue or an idea into its component parts, evaluates the issue or idea, and presents this breakdown and evaluation to the audience. So the idea is that it's looking at different, it's looking at going in depth into a particular topic. So can someone read this example for me? Maybe someone who hasn't spoken that much yet. Hanan, are you still with us?
Yes.
Can you read the example thesis statement for an analytical paper?
An analysis of the college admission process reveals one challenges facing counselors accepting students with high test scores or students with strong extracurricular backgrounds.
So what makes this analytical? What makes this analytical is that it's looking into the different aspects of a problem. It's not just looking at pros and cons, that is argumentative. But this is actually thinking about, hey, what are the challenges facing counselors? One specific aspect is the high school test scores. Right?
Admissions.
I'm sorry?
Admissions.
One thing that's affecting the college admissions process, absolutely. So this is an example of an analytical thesis. Let's go to the next one. Can someone read what's written here about an expository paper? Very simple. Khadija? Can you read the text on the slide?
Yeah, sure, sorry. Explain something to the audience. Oh my God, there's bad.
Great. Can you also read the example thesis statement?
Sure. The life of the typical college student is characterized by time spent studying, attending class, and socializing with peers.
So in this type of paper, your thesis statement, you're looking to describe something. You're looking to get into the characteristics of something. You're not looking to examine why it is. That would be analytical. But this is kind of just looking at describing a phenomenon, right? So the last type of paper, really quick, is an argumentative paper. Can we have Nidra? Are you with us? Nidra? All right, let's go to Fatma Salim. Fatma, are you with us? Oh, this is not great. Zahid, can you follow up with them to see if they're with us or not? Isha?
Yes.
Can you read the description of an argumentative paper?
Sure. Makes a claim about a topic and justifies this claim with specific evidence. The claim could be an opinion, a policy proposal, an evaluation, a cause and effect statement, or an interpretation. The goal of the argumentative paper is to convince the audience that the claim is true based on the evidence provided.
All right, so an argumentative paper kind of looks at the truth, whether something is a truth statement or not. Example thesis statement. Hamna, can you read it for us? Hamna? I guess Hamna's not. Ayman, can you read it for us?
Yes. High school graduates should be required to take a year off to pursue community service projects before entering college in order to increase their maturity and global awareness.
So this type of paper, thanks for that. This type of paper is clearly looking to make a certain kind of a truth claim about something and then kind of argue as to why, with evidence as to why they think it's true. All right, so analytical goes into the why and how of things. Expository looks to describe the what. Argumentative looks to make a claim and question that. All right. So with that, you can see that there are different types of thesis statements. So now let's get to our final activity. So this involves both some individual work and some group work. So what we want you to do is we're going to give you 2 scenarios. All right, maybe we can put them both on chat. And we'd like you to choose one of them and write a thesis statement through it. So basically it's a researcher. Both of them are written by researchers, by the way. They've written about their research question, what their findings told them, and what argument they're leaning towards. And using that, we want each of you to try writing your own thesis statement. And what we're going to do is we're going to give you about 10 minutes to do that. Just pick one scenario, whatever one you like more, write your thesis statement, and then we're going to split into 2 groups. And Ayesha and I are going to discuss what you wrote in each group. All right, that's going to be our last activity before we go into a discussion in general again. All right, so with that, let's go into scenario 1.
We do need 2
Before you
volunteers.
go into scenario 1, Bushra, Fatma is with us. She was unable to mute her mic, and so was Nidra for some reason.
Oh, all right, no problem at all.
I think Fatma has her issue sorted now, so she can participate going forward.
Okay, that's great. Then Fatma, if your issue is sorted, do you want to volunteer to read this passage? Okay, maybe the next one. Also, I think Hamna is here as well, but she has noise in her background. Guys, we do need a volunteer to read the first scenario out. Remember, you're picking between this one and the next one, so just pay attention, and you will get access to these afterwards as well, to write your thesis statement on. Okay, we've got Rehab and Furqan who are always participating, so I'm trying to get someone else to step forward. Otherwise, we will go back to them. Okay, Javeria, we've got Javeria who wants to participate. Rehab and Furqan, thank you guys for your participation, but we're trying to get everyone to talk a little bit. So Javeria, go ahead. Do you want to read the scenario out?
The scenario number 1. Ever since the US started its drone war in Pakistan, so many civilians have died that I began to wonder what's the point of the war in the first place? When do you say that enough innocent people have killed to stop a war? Can a war like this even be even legal? To examine its legality, you would have to look at some kind of international law, some sets of codes that all countries must follow when it comes to warfare. Of course, even if you check codes like that, you would have to compare it to what the USA is really doing, which isn't possible because the USA keeps so much of this information classified. It makes me think this war isn't legal at all, and I'd like to investigate that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Javeria. Bushra, do you want to add anything to that before we move on to our next scenario?
No, just that this is actually from a real research paper that a friend of ours wrote. And she's written the whole paper already, but she's kind of given us her thought process behind it and wants you to think of what thesis she came to, what conclusion she came to, given the question she started out with, and also the challenges she faced and the things that she found. So come up with a thesis statement or 2 based on that. All right, so next scenario.
So next is right here, and I saw Fatma Salim raise her hand last time. So are you still there, Fatma? Okay, if
Fatma wrote to me, she said that I'm listening and learning as well. Unfortunately, I have an issue with my mic, so
okay, no
yeah,
problem.
but she is with us. She's very active and she's with us. Thank you.
Okay, that's great. So does anyone else want to read this scenario out? It is also, by the way, roughly taken from a friend's master's thesis. Very roughly though, but similar ideas. Okay. So should we go for Rehab? Rehab has been raising her hand at every single prompt. Okay, go ahead, Rehab.
Scenario number 2, ever since the attack on APS Peshawar in 2014, and after witnessing the resilience of the students who returned to their school a few months later to continue learning, I became interested in studying education in conflict zones. More specifically, I was interested in examining the combined system of localized efforts and interventions by international development organizations that help create a safe learning environment for children. To do this, I looked up manifestos and reports on the websites of UNICEF and the World Bank, and found interviews of local tribal leaders in conflict zones in Pakistan. I found that if tribal leaders were supportive of opening schools, the communities were more comfortable with the idea of sending their kids to these schools. But international organizations contributed their expertise in designing programs. I can't read the last line because
I think
it's like hidden.
Can you bring it
That address students' physical and mental health.
Okay, thank you so much, guys. So to reiterate again, now what you're gonna do is you're gonna go off, you're actually gonna do a writing exercise. Bushra has very kindly put both the scenarios in the chat so you have access to them. Pick one and then try to write a thesis statement, okay, based on everything we've discussed. It doesn't have to be perfect, it doesn't have to be amazing, but just so that you guys have an idea and have a sense of writing a thesis statement for a research paper in the social sciences. Okay, so we're gonna give you 10 minutes to do that. And while you do that, we're going to sort out the breakout rooms so we can have a more detailed discussion about your theses. All right.
So we're still here.
Can I get
any questions? Let us know. Yes, if you guys are all set for the activity, let us have a thumbs up to know.
Give us that thumbs up. Yeah.
May I also invite our volunteers to attempt a thesis statement so they can also enjoy the discussion that we're going to have. And
Zahid is shaking his head.
No, you've got. So I'm sure a lot of you we kind of get concerned at the idea of writing, and we're like, are we a good writer or not? We will talk about that, but you do not have to be a good writer to write a good thesis statement. Just keep that in mind, whatever being a good writer even means.
Is it just a thesis statement, nothing else?
No,
Yeah,
let's see. Put some thought into that thesis statement. We want to see some good thesis statements.
I mean, this exercise is very open to interpretation, guys, because normally what would happen is you would do the research before you write your thesis statement. Obviously, we couldn't do that for this workshop, but this is therefore quite a creative exercise. We've given you the thought process behind it. So it's really open to interpretation. You can't really get too many things wrong, because if you say something, you can just say, well, that's what my research showed me, right? And we can't really dispute that because you haven't shown us the research. So it's nice. It's a creative exercise. So have a crack at it.
We should choose one scenario and write a thesis on any one of them.
Yeah.
Can you send the last one, like the first scenario?
They're both on the chat. They should be.
Oh yes, I found it. Thanks.
Awesome.
So guys, as you can tell, we're going to be here for a bit longer. So if you have 30 more minutes to spare, that's great. If you need to leave, you can even email us your thesis statement and we can send you some quick feedback on it. But we prefer if you stayed for the discussion for just another 30 minutes, perhaps.
This is the final thing, so don't worry.
Yes. But it is not an assessment. It is an opportunity.
Furkan, do you have a question?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay, your hand was raised, so I was just wondering.
Sorry for that.
No problem.
Can you hear me?
So, yes, Hamna.
Oh, okay. Sorry, my background noise was okay. Anyway, I'm gonna have to leave right now because my family's coming and I need to go to them. So,
Oh, no worries, Hamna. Thank you for letting us know, and thank you for staying with us so long. And if you
thank you so much. It was really fun.
do send it across and we can discuss it sometime. Right.
Okay. Oh, I actually took all the shops because I need knowledge as much as I can get. So, are you going to be in the next one also?
We have different workshop leads for every single one, but hopefully we'll be bringing you guys lots of workshops. So stay tuned.
Okay, thank you.
It was really nice having you, Hamna. Thank you. You're gonna get all the slides in your email.
All right, thank you.
Bye.
So what do we do once we have the statement ready?
I guess wait for everyone else to catch up. So if you're done, let us know in the chat. So maybe most people are done. We can start discussing.
Okay, that's interesting. We have people saying done. Let's see who's next.
Yeah, I think we do have 5 more minutes, I believe. Am I wrong? I don't know. I think we have 5 more minutes, right? But if everyone's done, we can move on. And let's just wait for.
So let's say 3 more minutes.
Okay, guys, I hope you're all wrapping up now. Please do put done in the chat once you're done.
Just 1 more minute. And then does it matter where you are, because it's, we just gave you 10 minutes to do your thesis statement. Usually you'll have a lot more time. But what's important to see is how were you going about it? If you'll notice, the whole workshop has been structured not to help you put words on a page, because anyone can do that, but to help you come up with the right thought process and hone your thought process to be able to do research writing.
Okay, I think Bushra, let's start the discussion. It is 9:40.
Sure, let's start the discussion with Ayman, because Ayman finished her thesis first. Ayman, are you ready? I will say, yes, Ayman?
Yes, ma'am. I'm ready.
Awesome. I will say that sharing your writing is something that terrifies me to this day. But what I've learned is to realize when I'm with people who are here to learn with me and who want to give me positive feedback and appreciate my effort. So you're in that kind of a safe space right now. So don't hesitate. There's no such thing as bad writing, especially for research writing. So just share what you have. Can you put it on chat, Ayman, what you wrote, and then read it out for us? So Ayman, yeah.
While Emin puts it on chat, can everyone else also, start writing out their thesis statements in the chat so we can go through and discuss them? And, we are a small group now, so we are just going to discuss it over here instead of the breakout rooms. And look, Bushra and I also shared our writing with you guys just to make sure that, we're not just asking you to share. We are also putting ourselves out there. So we know that it's really difficult, but we're all, like Bushra said, that this is a safe space. So we're just gonna talk about what you guys wrote and how you guys were going about it. Awesome.
Okay, I see some good stuff here.
All right, Emin, do you want to read out your thesis statement so that everyone can hear it as well?
Yes. With tribal leaders supporting the work of international organizations, families are more likely to send their children to school in conflict zones in Pakistan.
Zabardast. So I like it. I really like it. Do you want to tell us like how did you go about it? What was your thought process?
Yes, the first lines, the author mentions that the APS attack, so that I wanted to highlight that, conflict zones, and then they mentioned that they took their research from the organizations and their papers. So I wanted to highlight that too. So
That's amazing. That's really good. I think what I really like it. I think what I would add to this, just some food for thought, is when I read that, I would be like, well, so why are the communities more likely to support it if they have the tribal leaders' support? So I would maybe add something about legitimacy or authority in there. So, I would, from the scenario that was given, maybe I would think that, okay, it seems like these tribal leaders have some sort of authority or some sort of legitimacy that makes these communities trust them or trust, right? So any of these words. So I would try to maybe add something like that in there. But other than that, I really like it. Bushra, do you want to add anything?
I think what's wonderful to me is Ayman identified the research question. So the one thing I'm looking at everyone's research statements and trying to see if they figured out the research question. And I think Ayman understood that. She understood that the research. Can anyone actually here tell me what the research question is that the author had for scenario 2? I feel like a lot of people chose scenario 2. Anyone here wants to kind of guess what the research question is for scenario 2? Zahid?
Just because we have to guess, so I might have a go at it. It could be, that the work done by international organizations, for the opening of educational institutions, is it enough, or there are some other factors that will, support that opening of schools? This could be the research question.
Anyone else? I think that's correct. I think there is something in the text itself that tells us.
Yeah, it says combined system of localized efforts and interventions by international
Exactly.
development
More
organizations.
specifically, I was interested in examining the combined system of localized efforts and interventions by international development organizations that help create a safe learning environment for children. So the research question seems to be, what is the role of combined systems in developing safe learning environments for children in places like Peshawar, right? In conflict zones, basically. So great. I think let's look at other answers. Ayman's answer was really, really good. And let's see someone else. Zahid's was the research is about. Zahid, do you want to read out your thesis statement?
Sure. So what I wrote is, the research is about how tribal and community leaders can contribute and expedite the opening of educational institutes in conflicted zones, in addition to efforts put in by global educational experts.
I love what Zahid and Ayman have put forward, but they're kind of missing some details. That
I love the part which Aisha added, that how we can touch base upon the authoritative element of these tribal and community leaders.
Sure. But it's specifically in terms of the research paper itself and the approach that the paper took. I feel like these thesis statements, they're really good, solid thesis statements, but a thesis statement that would take things a step further would kind of talk a bit more, would include a bit more detail about the approach. Let's see what Isha. Isha, do you want to read it out for us? You went into research scenario 1.
And move the slide as well.
The research contributes to the legality of wars. I think it isn't legal because a lot of people are killed, which are really precious for their families. So there should be some laws that must be followed and problems should be solved through discussions.
So what was your thought process for this, Isha?
I just thought that wars are like not legal and a lot of precious people die and it's not good. So
Interesting. What I would point out, I think one thing that we're trying to emphasize is how writing a research paper, in research papers, there's no room for an I. There is no I in a research paper. You are supposed to be a neutral party that is coming in with a question, has examined the question using a solid evidence, and has come to a conclusion that they're open to being discussed. Right? So there's no room. So when we think about writing a thesis statement, we're not talking about how we feel about the topic. What we're talking about is, what was the research question that we went in with? How did we examine it? And what was the conclusion we came out with? 3 essential aspects to this. So while Isha, you actually got to the topic, you really seem to have understood the topic, and also you seem to have understood what the author used. You talked about laws, which is something the author touches upon, how they examine laws. What's kind of missing is the argument that the author is making based on how they connect their argument to their research findings. So that's what's missing here a little bit. Ayesha, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I think, and Bushra said this as well, I just want to reiterate that one of the litmus tests of your thesis statement is that, it should really tell us how you did the research, right? So what was your methodology? It should kind of indicate that. So not just what your stance on the topic is, or even if it's not your stance, but what the argument of the paper is, but it should, in a way, give us an indication as to how you arrived at the answer. So remember, at the end of the day, social science is about inquiry. So how did you inquire into the question? That should be reflected in your thesis statement. So, but I really love these attempts. I absolutely love them. I think let's move on to...
I actually love Rabia's statement as well. Rabia, can you read it for us?
Sure. To create a safe learning environment for students in tribal areas of Pakistan, a combined effort of local leaders and international organizations is needed.
It's actually really solid. What do you think, Ayesha?
I really like it. I think it gives you a good argument. It's well structured. Again, same point that I added before. I think I would add something about why that combined effort is needed. So some sort of indication, because when you're going to be doing this research, really think about it, right? When you do this research, what are you going to be inquiring? In the scenario, it also said that they did interviews of tribal leaders and stuff like that. What you're going to get through this kind of field work is you're going to find out that they have a lot of traditional hold and they have a lot of influence over the communities over there. Okay, so that's kind of what I wanted you guys to get out of this scenario, that when sorry, I'm going to go off on a bit of a tangent over here, but one of the fallacies that social scientists sometimes fall into is we see these systems, we see these states, we see constitutional laws, and and we think that that's everything that society is organized by, but it's not, because societies organize themselves before we had formalized codified laws as well. Okay, so what a lot of this research does when you go into the field is you find out how societies still organize themselves around informal institutions, like the authority that elders have, things like that. So I think that is, for me in this scenario, it really should reflect in the thesis that where is this legitimacy coming from? Why do we need a combined effort? It's because we need that legitimacy that these international organizations, no matter how elaborate their plans are, no matter how well researched their programs are, maybe they're just not going to appeal to the locals, right? So I think that I think I've made my point over there. So that's what I think you guys should do.
Next slide, Ayesha, because so that also gives us a summary of how to evaluate a research statement.
Yeah, I should have gone here.
All right. So actually, what I'd like to do is, first of all, Furqan, are you there still?
Yes, I'm here.
How do you feel about your thesis statement given the discussion we've had so far? Let's do some self-critique. What do you think? Is it good?
I don't know, but I feel bad because I feel that I mixed all the stuff now, and it's like completely, what should I say now? um, with respect to the different topics, I was good, but when it came to the last thing, which was a complete mix of it, I was not a bit good in it.
No worries. So now you kind of understood that the way you approach research writing and the way you approach a thesis statement is very different from how you would approach conventional writing. What I encourage you to do, Furqan, and everyone to do actually, is to attempt the other scenario and maybe email it to us if you like.
Okay, that would be perfect.
Right? So, okay, now I'd like to do something a little different. Asma has written a really interesting thesis statement. I find it fascinating. Covers a lot of points. What I'd like to do is have someone else evaluate. I'm going to ask you the questions on the slide and let me know if you think Asma's thesis statement meets this criteria. So first of all, Asma, can you read your thesis statement for us, please?
Yeah, sure. The drone war isn't legal as many civilians in Pakistan are being killed, and the reason behind this warfare is kept under classified, which makes the people all around the world question the legality of this war. So I actually, yes, basically I already wanted to say that first of all the information is classified, and it happened in Pakistan, but basically everyone around the world is already wondering about it, as well as the citizens of USA as well, about the legality of this war. Yeah.
What I like about this statement is that you covered a lot of things that were said by the author in her research.
Like I tried to link everything. Like I gathered all the points, and I was listening basically to you guys, like how you were expressing the another scenario too. So I tried to link all the points, and I just made one statement.
Great. Let's see. Rehab, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Great. What
But
I'd like you to do is critique Asma's statement based on the questions that we have on the screen. Can you do that right now with us?
yes, do I answer the research questions? Yes, she does, because she just does. Have I taken a position that others might challenge or oppose? Yes, definitely, because as soon as I read her thesis, I started questioning my thesis, and it was really, really good. And is my thesis statement specific enough? Yes, it is. She mentions everything. I think she mentions most of it. Does my thesis pass the so what test? Yes, it does.
So what?
Wait. Because she says like, wait, what do you really mean by so what test?
Does this thesis matter? Does this thesis is it
Yes,
relevant?
it does. Yeah, it is relevant because it has affected a lot of families, and her thesis makes sure that it says that is it like, it questions the legality of this war, and they are keeping the reason away from us, and it questions everything about it. Does my essay support my thesis specifically and without wondering? Yeah, because as soon as I read it, I didn't had to wonder about anything. It was pretty clear what she wrote. Does my thesis pass the how and why test?
What do
The
we mean by how and why here?
How and why, I think, because how did it happen, like what it says about it, and why, like why did it happen, why are they keeping it away from us, or that. So I think the first two lines of her thesis answers how, and the second two says why.
Great. Thank you so much for on-the-spot writing and on-the-spot review. This is really, really great. Ayesha, what would you say to this now? What do you think? Do you agree with Rehab's assessment? Where and where not?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it was a really good thesis statement. Let me just go back to it. Hold on. Sorry.
From the chat.
Yes, the drone war isn't legal. Honestly, I think it's really good. I think given the scenario that has been provided, I think Asma has done a really good job. I think it passes a so what test.
Thank you so much, Ayesha.
You're welcome. Thank you for participating. Again, I think over here, the one thing I would still add is maybe like methodology, right? So like, how would you answer the question? Like, how are you going about this? Because it gives us your argument, but you know, how did you arrive at it? Again, you always have a separate section for methodology, but it should be reflected in your thesis. So it would be something about, you know, this is where your creative element would come in this case for this scenario, about how you actually arrived at it. I think that's the only thing, but overall I'm really impressed. I know it takes me way longer to come up with any draft of a thesis statement, so I am very happy. So are you sharing the author's thesis?
I did. So this is for the first one. The author is Raja, actually, who led the first critical thinking workshop. And you could not have come up with this thesis statement because, first of all, this was done after weeks of research. And secondly, you don't have the full research, so you're probably not able to add as much detail to it. But this is how she wrote it. However, as I will explain in this paper, these drone attacks can be deemed absolutely unacceptable on 3 specific grounds. Firstly, they could be possibly breaking the international code on war. Secondly, they are claimed to result in terrible civilian casualties. And lastly, they may conceal possible war crimes in the USA, as their details are kept classified from the public. So drone attacks themselves, by the nature, they are unexpected, they're unexplained. So she kind of explains why she thinks they are illegal and why they should not happen. So notice how the thesis statement is not about her opinion. She's not kind of saying this is what I think it is. It's more about, this is what I did my research, as I'll explain in this paper, that I conclude drone attacks are completely unacceptable. Why? Argument number 1, argument number 2, argument number 3. So you can clearly tell this is an argumentative thesis. This is not an expository, not a descriptive thesis. This is not an analytical paper. This is an argumentative paper, right? So you can then think about, this is how my thesis statement should be for a research paper. All right, now we're about to hit the 10 o'clock mark. Anything you want to add, Ayesha, before we go into a casual discussion about a few things?
I actually moved to the next slide because I think we did finish that section of the activity. I think one of the things that, you know, the questions I would have had probably as a high school student attending a workshop like this is, do I need to be a good writer? You know, do I need to be naturally gifted at writing? And I hope what you guys should have gotten from this workshop is that, no, you don't necessarily have to be, because there's a systematic way to go through with the research writing. There's so many steps to it. There's actually steps of peer review and so many different things. If you take all of this into considerations, you have so many checklists, like you are going to be able to hit all the marks that you need to hit to write a really good research paper. So you know, definitely, like, if you don't write like poetry and like short stories and stuff, do not worry. I don't either, but I definitely am in the social sciences, and you can definitely do that. So I think that's my point. Bushra, do you want to add anything?
Definitely, just that I honestly don't know what a good writer is. I think that depends on the context, your audience, the type of writing you're doing, all of those things. But specifically for research writing, when I started college, I had to learn writing all over again, specifically for research. So it's one of those things that you have to keep doing to get better at. There's no like, I'm born with the skill or I'm not.
Yeah, you guys are definitely going to probably take courses in college that are going to teach you about academic writing, because it is very different to news writing and creative writing, etc. Now, the one last point before we send you off, it is, you know, it's a little bit of a, you know, it's something that no one wants to talk about, but it's very important. It's plagiarism. So when you are writing, now we said that you're going to be borrowing ideas and you're going to be, you know, discussing what other authors have talked about, but you cannot copy paste them in, and you can also not you know, reword what they've said and just put it in without citing them, which means you have to attribute, if you get ideas, if you get original ideas or original facts and research and stuff like that from other papers, you have to be able to tell us that this is not your information, that this is someone else's information, because that is their intellectual property. And if you do not do that, you're violating a lot of codes of, you know, of integrity. So at the end of the day, I mean, there's a whole like technical thing about how to cite, but the idea is you take existing knowledge, you attribute it to the people that that gave you that knowledge, and then you build on it with your own ideas. And to do that, you have to cite people and you have to cite scholars throughout your paper. Please do not copy paste from sources, and if you do take direct quotations, put them in quotation marks. Even if you take ideas from people, make sure that you say this is from this paper, so and so that we can highlight exactly what your contribution is to a research paper.
Yes, I don't have much to add to that except definitely go through referencing resources, definitely look up what plagiarism is. Almost any college or university in any part of the world use some plagiarism checkers, and that could literally like determine your grade. I've heard of people whose papers have been discounted because they didn't paraphrase enough. So definitely try to understand what plagiarism is further. Anything else? I think we should really conclude in a few minutes. Any questions from you guys before we head out?
Yeah, I do have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So, so I'm not like all into the social sciences. Just wanted to earn some general knowledge. So, how should I retain it, like for whole of my life? The best way of retaining it.
The best way of retaining this social sciences or research writing?
All of it, yeah, which we did today.
Well, so when you go to university, I really recommend that you do a few social science courses. And that's what I love about the American system. If you go to an American university, they have this general education program in which you have to do courses from other disciplines. Even if you're becoming an engineer, you can do a sociology course, you can do a politics course, and that will really help you, stay in sort of like be well informed about the world, because that is what the social sciences does at the end of the day. And I hope that that's what you guys got from this presentation, from this workshop. So one is, if you go to when you go to university, inshallah, or if you go, if that's what you choose to do, you do take up social science courses here and there. If your degree program allows that, I promise you it's going to add so much value to it. And other than that, you're probably, a lot of the things you learned over here are transferable to the hard sciences and to other fields as well, because at the end of the day, you are going to be writing research papers for pretty much any other field you go into, and a lot of the things, like the structure, is going to be similar. But if you want to stay in touch with the social sciences, read, there's like journals, just stay in touch with the news, but also like these journals that we've talked about, you can access them, and you can read like good publications like The Economist and Financial Times as well, or you can actually go into these like academic journals and go to Google Scholar, type in anything you're interested in. It's going to come out with like lots of different research papers about that topic, and a lot of them are free access. And if you're interested, you should definitely stay in touch. The reading is the appropriate way.
Maybe if reading is too big of a transition, look up some conferences and seminars. There are lots of videos on the internet now for them. Try to attend college and university talks now, because a lot of them are happening virtually. They're open to the public. So you get a sense of the fact that research is not just something that happens on paper or gets published and shared on paper. It's something that gets talked about and discussed and presented as well. It's a huge part of the field. So that might be an easier, softer transition to research writing and research in general as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rehab, you have your hand raised?
Yes. What advice would you like to give for students who want to pursue in sociology? Like, if they want to take psychology or something like criminal psychology or something like that, how would you tell them or advise them to pursue, start that? How should we get ourselves into it?
Bushra, do you want to take it?
I would say Google some famous books or texts, especially sociology. We can even maybe include some links after this workshop to send to you guys some interesting papers and things to read. So get into the more popular stuff first. That will give you a taste of it's not just the popular stuff that's really, really interesting. Actually, it's when you get into more specific subdisciplines and topics that you get into the stuff, really interesting things, in my opinion. But to give yourself a flavor, definitely look up books. look up talks and subjects, look up papers that are well known, articles that are based on, there are probably lots of websites that cover sociology research. So give yourself a taste of that. And actually, how could I forget this? Best of all, talk to someone who's working in the field. Talk to a professor, talk to a student, talk to someone who's currently pursuing a degree, ask them about their experience. How did they stumble into it? How did they get comfortable in it? How did they become proficient in it? So yeah, do your research.
Don't shy away from
Okay, thank
talking to anyone. Honestly, this is something that I'm still struggling with, networking, because I feel like people are not going to want to talk to me. But trust me, when you ask someone about what they do want to talk to you. So don't shy away, especially as a high school student. I'm sure everyone will be more than happy to do that. And yeah, I think what I would add to that as well, I think in the resource pack, I'm going to add a website I came across recently, which I found very useful. It links you to like pretty much all the think tanks around the world, and think tanks are organizations that produce this kind of research outside of universities. So you might find a think tank in your city. You might if you go onto their websites, you're going to find a lot of work being done, and I think that also gives you like a sort of, if you just follow like one think tank, for example, that is working on something that you care about, you're kind of just in the know of like what's going on. So there is definitely different ways to go about it, but I think what Bushra said about talking to someone who's in the field, I think that's definitely number one. Don't shy away from doing that at all.
Thank you. It really helped.
Bushra, I have a question for you actually.
Sure, go ahead.
Like basically, I remember you told that you actually had taken science and you actually took it because like your mom had advised you that you can later on switch back to any other field if you would. Like actually, I've done the same thing basically. Like even I've chosen like all triple science, and even I do like physics now a lot, especially biology. And even I have like a major interest in psychology. Like even I've been exploring. I did some personality test and all the career tests because before I was confused, and in our school there's only commerce and science available, so I couldn't take psychology as a subject. So basically I'm exploring, and I know that I'm very much interested in social sciences, especially psychology, that I could even like see myself as going for becoming a psychologist or a therapist or like something in that field. So even I want to like ask you that how was your journey on that?
I loved it. Definitely, I absolutely loved it. I think with anything, it just comes down to how much time you're willing to dedicate to catching up or learning, and how much effort you want to put into it, which is why I believe that if you're interested in something, there's a good chance you're going to excel in it because you've put in the time and effort that is needed. So I don't think, and honestly, so I went into the US college system, and the reason why I did that was also because it gave me more wiggle room to decide my major, and especially the liberal arts system, it gave me a chance to explore different topics. So what I would suggest doing is, if you're not sure, if you want to experiment a little bit, go into a program that gives you the chance to do that, or do a summer program, or do an online course, go to Coursera and try out different. I mean, you live in a world today where everything is at your fingertips. So take advantage of that. Put in the time and effort to get to know something. We have a whole series of workshops going on. We actually have a workshop coming up in December on research writing for the hard sciences, for the quantitative sciences. So look at that as well. See if that's something that you enjoy. Where we have workshops coming up on on history, on philosophy, programming. So
and I did sign up for all the workshops because I was like, I really want to get to know. And as now we have like an opportunity that if we cannot come and visit, then we can actually attend online. So that's actually a really great thing. I mean, just like any of the, like you took sciences, so was there any useful to you in psychology department, like in psychology field?
Definitely, the psychology involves a little bit more of the hard sciences. So you could be using a little bit of biology. Like there's some neurology in it, but again, psychology is a very vast field, and you could go into more of the behavioral cognitive sciences, or you could go more into the neurological aspects of that. But so explore it, talk to people who are studying, who are working in the field, and decide if that's something you want to do in the future. There's a lot of scope in it, definitely, for sure.
I think that's why I took hard sciences, because I wasn't actually sure that which field I want to go. Like I didn't have anything fixed in my mind, but I was like, I'm interested in a lot of fields, and I find everything so interesting.
You're in good company. You're in good company. Don't worry. We all come from very similar backgrounds.
I think there's one major misconception in our community that certain majors are automatically high earning and some are not. And I think that's a misconception. That's not just about, oh, you follow your dreams, but more like you don't know the ground reality. So for example, when I took on econ, I was interested in international development. Then I go to a college in the US and I started studying econ, and I realized that people are into it to work at McKinsey and Bain as consultants, you know, and they're in it for the earning potential, not because they're interested in development. And similarly, if you work in psychology, like if you go into psychiatry, if you become a therapist or something like that, or you even go into research, they're really high paying jobs to be found. Similarly, if you go into engineering, if there's no guarantee that you're going to find a job, but like it depends on the type of engineering or which company you end up at. So don't let that kind of correlation. Do your research in each field. If earning a high income is a huge priority for you, understand what careers look like in different fields. But there is no real correlation between just studying certain fields and earning high income just like that. You know, it depends on where you go.
I mean, you're right. At one point, even I have this kind of misconception about becoming a psychologist. I was like, oh, I should go for it. And then I thought that, yeah, many people I know. But the thing is that I met you guys today, and it was like really great about you both being in social sciences, and you're like so passionate about it. And being like seeing you like this, it actually even encourages me and motivates me as well to go for it. Whereas if I see some people, they're just like, oh yeah, it's social sciences, sociology, it's like interesting, but then we just don't want to go for it. Even though they are interested, but they have this misconception that, oh, if we go for it, we won't succeed. Engineering and doctor is much more higher field, it has much more importance. But I think every field has equal importance in its own
Usually
field.
brown parents have that conception in their head that, oh, nahi, psychologist nahi banna hai. And it's like, okay.
Yeah, I agree to you.
And we need to beat that misconception.
I think it's a good thing if we become a psycho, so we can set an example for our parents that yes, it's possible, and if we can succeed, then anyone can succeed. Exactly. We need to like set an example and make a change for once and for all.
Absolutely. Oh, this is making me so happy. I'm so glad that you guys are taking inspiration from this, and definitely, like, you know, you should I really like, if you're interested in the social sciences and psychology, you know, definitely do the kind of research that will help you, you know, make the effort to do it, you know, to at least give it a fair shot, to go after what you're really interested in. But yeah, definitely.
Even if you take any other field, for example, I would surely do a course in it, because
definitely minor in it at least, or anything. And even now, like Bushra said, there's just so many opportunities. I feel like learning is just such a lifelong process. It does not end with university. So you can always learn on the side, and you should always learn on the side. I don't think learning should ever stop at any point. And that's what I love about the social sciences, you know, that there's just so many opportunities to just do that, like on the daily, right? So absolutely love it. Guys, please do send in if you have any testimonials to share with PYF, you know, if you have any thoughts about how you found this workshop or anything, what you're going to do with it, you know, please do send it to our media representative, which is Iqra Rafiq. So you can send it to that email address, pyfdubai@gmail.com. And do make sure to follow us on Instagram at pyfdubai. And we've also got mine and Bushra's email addresses and Instagrams on here. If you guys want to reach out to us individually, ask us any questions, you know, feel free to do that as well.
Thank you so much. I'm amazed. Thank you for sticking
Thank you so much.
The entire workshop. We hope you learned a lot of interesting things and are going to apply them in different fields. Honestly, I think it's something you can carry forward. And with that, have a wonderful night, and inshallah, we'll see you at future workshops.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.